Under additions and deletions to the agenda, we have additional backup material for 11B1. And are there any other additions or deletions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Bowden.
You look familiar.
Thank you. I'd like to add an emergency item, please, and I'd like it to be placed under number 4, which is emergency items. Interim land use attorney for P&Z and commission, please.
Interim land use for attorney. Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll put that under your items at the end.
No, under number 4, emergency items. Let's just deal with it right now. If that's okay.
What's the nature of the emergency?
The emergency is that we have received an emergency item from our county attorney that he's had to take an immediate sick leave indefinitely.
Right.
For a family member.
Can we get a motion? Is that a motion?
Okay. You want to do that all in one as a motion to adopt the agenda?
Yeah, we can adopt it and would adopt that under 4 and discuss it now.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a change also, if I may.
Okay.
I have an item coming up under 13E1 under my matters that follows the presentation under 5B. So if I could have my matter moved up to follow the 5B presentation.
Okay, there wasn't any backup on yours, was there?
Yes, there was. There's a press release.
Oh, there was, yes, okay. And you want that under move
13E1 to follow 5B.
To 5B. Okay.
Thank you.
I think we can move these all at once.
If you'd like a motion to stating so, I'm more than ready.
Okay.
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, we'll move to the land use attorney that Commissioner Bowden has added.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to, at this time, present something I've thought about really recently very, very hard, and that is to hire an interim land use attorney for P&Z and for the commission. We have matters that come forward that are of great importance now, and sometimes we have differences of opinion on different commissions and with their attorneys and with us. So I would like someone experienced in this and someone who can stand up to all of us on the P&Z and someone totally independent and that has had success in land attorney. And we would need to, since we're not having the meeting, the first meeting in January, we would have some time, because we're meeting the second week in January, to have this brought forward and an immediate search, and we'd have to advertise, I suppose, and just get this going so that we don't get into any situations that can be prevented.
Okay, I'll second that for discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Davis.
Yes. With the issue with Grand Harbor, with the issues with DeVosta, and with the issues now that we're faced with our legal staff, or with Mr. Collins, the unfortunate incidents there, we're clearly walking in uncharted waters without nothing slighting our assistant attorneys or anything like that, but clearly in all matters that we have that is specialized, be it labor contracts, we go to outside attorneys. And I think that this is something that where we need full-time on somebody to look not just over our shoulder but look down the road for us, so that we don't go in a direction that costs the taxpayers a lot more than somebody to be retained to give us legal advice would cost.
And this is in no means replacement of Mr. Collins.
No,
this is interim, and this is to meet the emergency needs we have.
And specific. It's a specific topic.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I don't think you have to advertise. I think they can work on choosing.
Yes.
I think it's just you're looking for someone specialized in the area because we've gotten so much controversy over, and we've got some big issues facing us.
And I think, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think more specific than just land use, more almost a DRI law somebody that really understands the ins and outs and has been on both sides of the issue, so that they know they can anticipate the other side's strategy. And I think that's very important.
Can I just go? One thing is that it was brought up that it would. I don't believe it's a good idea to have one just working for the P&Z. It should work for the board.
Yes.
Yes.
Came up last night. I do not think that's a good idea.
No, I agree. I mean, this is not just for P&Z to get advice. This is for to advise this board.
And you said advises both.
Yes, I don't mind that.
Okay.
And the county administrator is correct. We would not need to advertise for an interim position.
Okay, that's
Mr. DeBarle?
even better.
Chairman Phil DeBarle from the County Attorney's Office. I spoke yesterday with David Tucker from the Neighbors Giblin firm. He offered his assistance, his firm's assistance, in any matters that we might have on an interim basis. Unfortunately, he was not able to send one of his younger associates down to help us on a full-time basis when I asked him to do that, to try and eliminate some of the crunch. But yes, I think that on a case-by-case basis, assigning tasks or issues to a firm such as the Neighbors firm that we're familiar with, they're familiar with us, would be a good idea at this point. Are there specific issues that the council or that the commission has in mind that they'd like to be assigned to a firm such as that?
Well,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, just like I stated, I think that the decision as far as the DeVosta development not being vested, we've made that decision. Now we need to make sure that we've got our ducks in a row as we move forward. It's clearly an uncharted territory. Additionally, we have the issue that P&Z dealt with last night with the Grand Harbor issue. Those are all huge issues. There's large financial implications to both sides of the debate. And I think that we need to make as educated decisions as we possibly can. And I don't mean to slight anybody on P&Z nor anybody on this commission, but there's a reason why they have people that specialize in this area of law. And I think we need to tap into their expertise.
And the firms that are representing the people who are coming before us are the experts in that. That's why they have them. Right. And so we have to have experts too at this point and have full confidence that we know what we're doing and it has been explained to us so we can understand what we're doing. And because we have to make these decisions sometimes in less than 15 or 20 minutes. And this is not appropriate at this time. So I would then think we could move forward if there's no...
Mr. Chairman, or...
A couple of the people want to speak.
When things are going your way, you're supposed to sit down and keep quiet, but...
If you're a lawyer.
I am a lawyer, and I'm George Christopher, a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, particularly now with Mr. Collins' temporary absence. I think it's critical that P&Z and the Commission have an attorney on an interim basis, not an employee of the county, but an outside practicing lawyer who is versed in land use issues, regional issues, and land use issues, and it be on a trial interim basis, but not on a selective issue basis, but rather to advise the P&Z on any issue that come before us. Now, some are more important than others, but we repeatedly at P&Z, and there's been a number of instances, we were told on the land swap issue that we were compelled to approve it, and that proved not to be the case. So it's got to be, in my mind, it should be a lawyer who will be available to advise P&Z at our meetings on land use issues, and on an interim basis and on a trial basis, and see how it progresses. But I'm thinking if you go this route, you need somebody very experienced, whether you get them from Shubin's office, whether you go to an outfit like the Environmental Law Center in Fort Lauderdale, which is a nonprofit group that has involved itself in land use issues, or there are undoubtedly other lawyers, but it has to be a lawyer with independence and with experience, and somebody who's very well trained. And I commend you for taking this up. Thank you.
Paladin?
Thank you. Joseph Paladin, Chairman of the Growth Awareness Committee. I'm not a lawyer, but I did watch a lot of Perry Mason when I was a kid. I want to take a moment to support Ms. Bowden on this. I think it's a good idea, and I think it's a necessity. And I would agree with everything that Mr. Christopher said, and I think that we ought to look for an attorney that does specialize in these matters and has no local ties to law firms that we may have been involved with in the past, and is totally in our favor as far as the client being the county. So I would support Ms. Bowden in this effort and ask you to bring this forth as quickly as possible. Thank you.
I would, sitting here and looking at this, first I've heard about it this morning. I think there's valid points being made, and I've seen some of obviously the growth we've been experiencing here in the last few years, and the maybe not army of lawyers, but an awful lot of them coming in with the different developers that are experts in their field and deal with this on a daily basis. And that's one of the reasons that we hired Mr. Shubin over the DeVasta DRI. I would like to see, and I would like to see that we do a search to find out not only who's the best and who's got the best reputation and who we can use, and then I'd like to see them selected jointly. I would like to see staff involved. If I were to pick, I would say that Mr. Christopher, who is a lawyer and on P&Z, would be involved in that. Mr. Paladin, who's a developer, has that interest, could be involved in that, and a member of this commission to decide who would be the best lawyer to come in here and serve all our interest unbiasedly. And I think that committee would be somewhat diverse in who they're talking to.
Fine, and we would have to find out what firm is available to do this, because the one we might choose might not be available.
I'd like to say that, I'm not over the legal. Of course, legal's separate, but I would have some concern at working just straight for the P&Z. I think we're one organization, and you all are responsible. And that's the only comment. I think we definitely need an outside counsel on the planning matters that we have in front of us and the litigation we have facing us. But I just don't think that's a healthy way to do it, and I'll be right up front. I should work for the board and not at the direction of the P&Z.
I agree with
I don't think there's a commissioner that disagrees with that statement.
No, I don't, but I think everything comes to final rest with the board. All the decisions P&Z makes, or most of the decisions they make, come back to the board for final approval. But I also think that this attorney could work closely with P&Z and through the system, and then work with us as these issues come up. And P&Z is where an awful lot of the work and the fact-finding takes place on many of these issues that come back to us.
And I'm not sure whether or not an approval by the P&Z may give some legal standing later on even if this commission decides to do the opposite of that. I think that, the same legal advice following all the way through and us being consistent in our policy and having somebody to give us the legal advice to do so would be prudent.
Well, the only thing I'm saying is in my mind, I think that to have a lawyer on board for property issues, it should start with P&Z. That's where the basic discussion starts with staff. That's where everything happens. And rather than having P&Z look at something and then have the attorney that we hire come in later for the board, I think they should be a part of the process from finish to end, or end to finish.
Commissioner Bowden, I think this is a wonderful idea, and I appreciate you coming up with it, and I support you 100%.
Question, Mr. Chairman. Would you want the outside counsel to, such as review the P&Z package prior to the meeting, be involved in the write-up? I'm trying to figure out at what stage you'd like the outside counsel to come in and lend assistance. When staff would need them, when staff would have a question, when you would have questions. Just a point of discussion.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, the way I would see it appropriate for them to get the package in advance. As far as having them sit in a meeting, I think it's going to be cheaper for us to have, if there's questions that arise, write the questions down, send the questions to them. I'm just throwing that out for, and if they have to look at something on the tape, I think if we hire somebody from Tallahassee to come down here, or somebody from Miami to come down here and sit through all of our P&Z meetings and all of our county commission meetings until we do have a question, to me, that's counterproductive. I don't think that would be prudent, so.
Well, and some of the things I'd like to look at too is maybe on a contract basis for a certain period of time rather than an hourly rate. And I don't know, I think it might not be a bad idea now that it's brought up that this attorney does work at P&Z, simply because we are shorthanded. We have two attorneys left, and we've got an awful lot of legal stuff going on and a lot more in the wings. But I think that there could be an advantage to that, particularly with somebody that's a property expert attorney.
And it's been my experience and over the years in public service that different law firms under different situations react differently as far as having a special rate or until this is to help us over the hump here. I would not be surprised if we didn't get a special rate from a top-notch firm to do this.
We're making case law, it appears to me, with the DRI issues.
So this needs to be looked into and brought back to us at our next meeting probably, and see what we come up with. But we certainly need somebody expertise and independent.
Well, perhaps if we could, your pleasure, if we get a motion that would state that we'll move forward with this and bring it back for final approval in January, and who would like to, perhaps Sandra, you would represent the board in this, with the selection committee.
I'd be happy to do that.
But if we get a motion to that effect, then bring it back and the devil's in the details, and we can work that out at the first meeting in January.
Right.
Does your motion preclude the exploring of temporarily replacing Will Collins as far as?
No, I'm talking about
task and assignment.
I'm talking about an interim. I'm not talking about any replacement. I'm talking about an interim situation here that we need some more. We need another person, and we need an expert.
It's almost an ad hoc attorney, for the lack of a better term, for a specific item.
Yes, and that'd be property. Wouldn't be dealing with other legal issues in the county.
Right. Just
Land use.
We most certainly need another attorney on staff to protect the citizens, but we already have an attorney on staff that may be able to render support and be general counsel in the interim during Mr. Collins'
Right, and that's a different item and issue completely.
Okay.
This is not, this is as a pinpoint, right. No, that, and I understand what you're saying, but this is a surgical situation that we need an expert in this particular area immediately.
2 points,
Just on
Mr.
land
Chairman.
use.
Yes.
I'm sorry. It might be that we'd be able to do a search and contract with an attorney specializing in land use law and bring him or her on board for 30 days, 60 days. There are many attorneys, and there are even firms dedicated to helping people find contract attorneys for a set period. And secondly, if I don't think that a member from our staff is necessary to be on your committee as suggested, but certainly we'd like to be there and advise and go through the interview process, just as the county administrator's office, I think, should be involved as well.
Well, I don't know that that's, that we could have input from there, but this is a legal matter, and our departments are separate. The legal staff works directly for the board.
Yes, sir.
As does the administrator, and as does our aide, or executive aide, whatever. So I think that, I think our legal staff, and if we have 4 people discussing that, I think we can come up with the best solutions, my position, but.
Mr. Chairman,
I think my planning staff, like Bob Keating, should be on the selection. He knows what questions to ask about zoning and things like that, and I think he'd be,
Greatly
I think we need that
appreciated.
represented.
Mr. Chairman, if I make a motion that we have staff develop a request for proposal, basically, for an interim land use attorney, and that Commissioner Bowden should coordinate that from the Board of Commissioners.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Now we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
But we had another motion in a second already, but we don't use Robert's rules, so I guess it really doesn't matter.
Glad you're paying attention. Because if we were, we'd have...
That's all right. No, y'all are doing a fine job. We got it accomplished. That's what counts.
Thank you,
That's right.
Mr.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
Glad to see you
Mr.
coming around.
No problem. And I'm even learning how to say Mr. Chairman.
The, next is a proclamation, or, I'm sorry, under proclamation, presentation of a check by the firefighters of Indian River County for the fair.
Mr. Chairman, Commission, pleasure to be here. My name is Joe Ehrman. I'm president of the Indian River County Fair Association, along with our general manager of the fair, Toby Turner. We're glad to be here today. The fair, of course, was back in March. We have another one coming up in March of 2007. We've done a lot of things, overcome a lot of obstacles, from hurricanes to inmates, all that sort of stuff. But I want to say one thing: the fair was a success because of the effort put forward by the firefighters, put forward by the county and its staff, the sheriff's department. Glad to see the sheriffs here. We couldn't do it without them. And of course, the parks department, Mr. Romanic's group. The fair is a success because all those people pull together and make it a success. What I'd like to do right now is kind of let Mr. Turner talk about the fair, what successes and stuff we had last year, what we're looking forward to in the coming year, and then we'll be glad to give you the check and talk about maybe what the future holds with regards to the master plan that was talked about a couple of months ago by the previous board. So, Toby.
Thank you, Joseph. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for allowing me to be here. My name is Toby Turner. I'm general manager of the Firefighters Fair. I took over in 1996 from Joe when he stepped down, and I guess I was the only one standing in the front of the line when that happened. The fair last year was a success. We had excellent weather. As you know, anytime you put on an outside event, you hope that you have good weather, whether it's a weekend or a 10-day program like we have. The weather was good. We had an attendance of 50,095 people that came to the event. As you know, we have over 100,000 that live in the county. We'd like for everybody to come out, but at this time, we'll continue to encourage everyone to continue to support the fair. As you know, 1/3 of our net profits, after all of our bills are paid, will be turned back over to the county, and that's what our check presentation is for today from last year's program. The other 2/3 is left to do things in the community for charitable activity. The fair this next year is scheduled for March 9th through the 18th. As you know, with the inmates being housed in the jail, our understanding, my last conversation with the jail staff, Mr. McMullen, was that I think it's about 2 weeks after the fair is over, tentatively, hopefully they're supposed to be in their new facility. So we're hoping our 2008 season will continue to get back into our building that's bought by with taxpayer dollars with the grant money from the state of Florida, as well as some of the proceeds that we use from the fair. So we've had some lost revenue from there, but we did have a successful year. I appreciate the Parks Department with all their support. I appreciate the Commission helping us do what we need to do, and I'm looking forward to a new season. And the fair's theme is the fair, be seen there. That's our new season for this next program. So, thank you. Joseph, you turn back over to you. You'll do your presentation, and we thank you very much. If any questions for us, we'll be glad to answer those while we're here.
Thank you, Toby.
You bet.
I know, and Mr. Baird, I'm going to ask you to help me with this. I know that we talked about the fair. I mean, the fair is getting bigger and bigger, more residents. We're talking about new planning and zoning and all that good stuff, but the fair has gotten bigger since its inception back in the old city fairgrounds right in front of the airport back in 1980. It's getting larger and larger. I know that the previous commission had talked about a master plan. I know we wanted to mention that today. I'll kind of let Mr. Baird help me on that.
Well, we have an old master plan, and there was some discussion about hiring a consultant to update the master plan, taking into consideration, everyone's uses of soccer association and everybody out there, everyone has some input. And I think it actually went to Parks and Recreation. I think we take it through there, but we are looking at coming back to hire a consultant. We're going to have to go through the Competitive Negotiation Act for it to update. We're going to update the master plan that we have in place now.
Great.
So we'd love to see that move forward. I mean, it's to to move up and to get going with the fair and modernize it and get everything happen, even make it even better than we are. We look forward to that, and we can't wait for that to happen.
Didn't we? I'm going by memory, as I could be. Didn't we approve something in that direction last year for a master plan? I know we discussed it, but I don't remember what the results were.
I think we stopped short of any vote approval on it because Joe had some concerns about whether or not we had to go through the competitive bid process. Joe felt uncomfortable moving forward with it in that direction, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, what happened is, since it's an architect or an engineer that's going to be doing it, we have to go through the Competitive Negotiation Act under law, CNNA, and so what we did is we also took it back through the Parks and Rec Committee. I believe that's what we're going to do because they're involved in that, and we'll have to send it out and advertise it like is required under law.
Sure, and this is something that I think is long overdue. We've got a wonderful asset up there with our fairgrounds, and at the same time, it's a wonderful asset. It's also a way underutilized public asset, and there's some dollars set aside to do some infrastructure improvement as far as paving of the midway, and obviously those dollars are already sitting, from what I understand. But before we put down something permanent, we'd like to go through one last time to do an updated master plan, just to see to it that we're heading in the right direction and not moving forward piecemeal.
Yeah, we'd love to see that. I believe, Mr. Wheeler, Mr. Barrett can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that we did, I think we stopped short of approving it. I think we had directed staff to investigate it and to look at it. So we just like to get that ball rolling. I think I think we need to just get this thing in motion. I can't agree with Mr. Davis more. We got a gem of the county up there that's just being underutilized. That's all. That being said, we'd like to present the county with their check for $35,007 for the 1/3 proceeds of the fair last year, and I'm sure that Mr. Romanek will use it wisely.
There you go.
Thanks for your time.
The drive-through?
We'll give it to Joe.
Keep it on over to Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Toby. Next is a presentation regarding wildlife refuge funding crisis, impact on Pelican Island National Wildlife Refuge by Pelican Island Preservation Society, Pelican Island Audubon Society, and the Chamber of Commerce.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing us to present today. I'm Bonnie Swanson, and I'm the president of the Pelican Island Preservation Society. It is a group of friends who are volunteers serving the needs of our federal wildlife refuge. I also have with me Jen Stripson from the Audubon. I have Penny Chandler from the Chamber of Commerce and Beth Mitchell from the Sebastian Chamber of Commerce with me, and also Paul Tritak, who is the ranger, is the manager of the refuge. You may know, I hope you know, that we have a treasure right here in Indian River County, and it is the Pelican Island Wildlife Refuge. It was the first in the nation, and it was declared a refuge by Teddy Roosevelt in the early 1900s. What we're facing today is a serious financial crisis that we wanted to make our public aware of, because we're soliciting your support and help to a serious need. The National Wildlife Refuge System is facing a very serious funding deficit and needs your help. To cope with this deficit, the southeast region of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has completed what they call the Workforce Management Plan. The other 6 regions have or will complete similar plans. In our region, in order to save money, the Fish and Wildlife Service is proposing to eliminate 89 positions over the next 3 years, including 2 at Pelican Island. 68 positions have already been eliminated, including 2 more at Pelican Island. This means that by fiscal year 2009, the total staffing for the Pelican Island and Archie Carr refuges will be 2 positions. The total staffing for the down 66% since 2003. Further, the plan calls for placing the 2 refuges back under Merritt Island Refuge, which was the situation which existed prior to the centennial. The Fish and Wildlife Service plan places all 128 refuges in our region into one of 3 categories. The one is focus, one is targeted reduction, and another is satellite with no staffing. We are so concerned with this because Pelican Island was not even selected as a focus refuge, despite its resource values and its great historical significance to our area, since it is the first national wildlife refuge. We are appealing this decision. Obviously, the severe reduction in staffing will seriously negatively impact the public use and wildlife management programs on both refuges. Many tasks simply won't get done, and we will lose much of our progress made over the last 10 years. What we're asking is, it's got to be emphasized that this is not a local or regional problem. It is a problem impacting the entire refuge system. The solution is to significantly increase operations and maintenance funding for the National Wildlife Refuge System beginning with federal year 2008. The current funding level for operations and maintenance is about $380 million. This needs to be increased to $700 million over the next few years. Refuge groups like ours, Pelican Island Wildlife, the Preservation Society, is eliciting your support and other community agencies to bring this to light. Our biggest concern, though, is that while our wildlife refuge is going to disappear in the face of our public, and we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So I'd like to invite Penny Chandler and Jen Stripson up to speak to this issue.
Good morning. I'm Penny Chandler. I'm with the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce, and I'm speaking on behalf of our chamber as well as the Sebastian River Area Chamber. Their executive, Beth Mitchell, is also here with us today. As was mentioned, we are very concerned. We are right alongside the other organizations, the environmental groups that are very concerned about what's happening. Almost all of Pelican Island's budget will be eliminated, and while we understand that the federal government has new and increased costs, new fixed costs that they're involved in, we believe that as America's first wildlife refuge, this icon of all United States wildlife refuges should be protected. For our local Pelican Island, the cuts mean no one to guide educational programs that include tours for school children, and volunteer groups will organize an annual wildlife festival, possibly the end of the turtle watches at nearby Archie Carr, larger gaps in gathering data for sea turtle nesting and other wildlife. The benefits of retaining the funds include the protection of wildlife, the protection of the island itself, its shores, and just in overall, the special place has served as an eco-heritage destination for decades. My understanding is if you go to the Department of the Interior, there are pictures all over the walls of Pelican Island, and the fact that they thought it was so important, they spent over $500,000 not long ago, as you recall, in celebration of that refuge anniversary. Our chamber supports environmental groups and others to appeal and amend to the United States Fish and Wildlife budget for an amendment to maintain local funding to the Pelican Island National Wildlife Refuge, and we hope that we can also gain your support. We believe that as a larger coalition of groups, there is more chance of appeal and amendment if we all stick together on this effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny.
I have one question, Penny. Is this the 2007 budget, or is this indefinitely, or what exactly?
Well, I think Paul maybe can, or somebody else may be able to give you more information about that. My understanding is that the budget has now been cut, and that it's not looking to have them not make this decision. The decision has been made. It's to have them overturn that decision and appeal to them to amend the budget.
Okay.
Is there anyone else? Jens?
Jen Stripson. I'm here representing Pelican Island Audubon Society. I think as our county's changing and our agricultural industry, especially citrus, is declining as a major economic engine, One place we can look is ecotourism, and I think people across the country and probably around the world are interested in coming here to see Pelican Island National Wildlife Refuge, as it being the first in our country, but also because of the flora and fauna that's there. And with them cutting out so many employees, it's basically down to Mr. Tritak and I think one other employee. They're kind of dead in the water. You know, they're not going to be able to give tours to tourists or to school children, and it would behoove us to contact our federal representatives and the Department of Interior and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to reinstate the funding and possibly increase it in future years. That's my basic view, encouraging you to adopt this resolution and send it to as many people as deemed necessary in our federal government to try to get this done. What I'd like to do now is Dr. David Cox was not able to be here because of the death in the family, and he asked me if I would read a letter that he wrote and sent to me last night, if that's okay. I can't see with him and can't see without him. It all began with one man and one boat protecting pelicans on a tiny 5-acre island in Florida. Now Pelican Island, the birthplace of our National Wildlife Refuge System, is threatened once again. For generations, residents of Indian River County have taken pride in knowing Pelican Island was a very special place. However, with this special gift comes the responsibility to stand up and fight to protect Pelican Island and its wildlife heritage. For generations, residents of Indian River County have shouldered this responsibility, beginning with Paul Craigle, continuing through Joe Michael and Maggie Bowman and others. They stepped up to fight for Pelican Island. Now it's our turn. Today's threats are real, yet our ability to protect Pelican Island is being eroded by actions far away in Washington. In the end, this place is ours to protect, and protecting it is a sacred trust we keep for the future. This is about more than just a special place, the land, the water, and wildlife. It's about who we are. I know you'll join with us in urging our elected representatives and officials in Washington to restore full funding for our national wildlife refuges. Today, Pelican Island National Wildlife Refuge is 5,000 acres larger and over 100 years older, and its protection needs more than just one man and one boat. We must fight for a renewed commitment to our refuges, one that will benefit wildlife and our community for the next 100 years. Thank you, David Cox. And I thank you also.
Thank you, Jens. Mr. O'Brien?
Yeah, under my matters, I just request permission from the board to have the county attorney prepare a resolution of support that'll be sent to Senators Bill Nelson and Mel Martinez and Congressman David Weldon, and requesting that full funding be reinstated to the Fish and Wildlife Service budget so that we can make sure that our wildlife refuges are fully staffed and not negatively impacted.
I'll second that.
Could we add to that, do we have a Washington lobbyist now?
Yeah, actually, we're working on an agreement with Marlowe and Associates right now. They do the beach, and we're expanding that agreement to do all of our county business, and we could include that in the lobbyist.
Well, we can see how good he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'd like you to just, any force and guns we can bring out for this effort, I think we desperately need to do. I mean, this is a gem. 66,000 people come visit it every year. It's a major economic impact to the community, as well as all the other benefits we already heard. So anything we can bear to get this through, would appreciate it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Yeah,
Wesley?
Yeah, no, I think not just locally. I mean, it's very important locally, but I'm looking at the list from in the backup material. Chasahowitzka, Lake Woodruff, St. Vincent's Island. I've personally set foot in those areas, and they're well outside the boundaries of Indian River County, aside from Pelican Island, obviously. I haven't set foot on that because it's illegal, but still. You know, it's something that it drives a tremendous economic engine. You know, you go up and you visit these areas, people come back and talk about them, then they send other people down to look at them. And I think it's very important for us to be able to manage these natural resources and have the experts in place to keep them for generations to come. These individual places that I've named, I had the opportunity to hunt them. And I certainly want that wildlife to flourish and to be available to generations of Davises to follow.
Well, this is a national treasure,
Yes.
all of these areas, and so maybe you're suggesting that we coordinate or send a letter to the other states where these are or the other locations, and we do a joint effort.
I think we shouldn't be just focused on Pelican Island. I think if we focus on the big picture, we get them all. The entire system. I really do. Yes.
Fish and wildlife.
You want to add that to your?
Yeah, I mean, it can apply to the entire National Wildlife Refuge Program.
I'll second that. We have a motion to second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0. Next is the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like for some information, M and N, please.
M and N. Okay. Any other? Not, can we get a motion to approve?
Move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item M, resolution authorizing the Florida Department of Transportation Maintenance Memorandum of Agreement, MOA, for US 1 Oslo Road to the South Relief Canal for landscape maintenance. Memorandum dated December 8th, 2006, found on pages 76 through 79.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is almost $400,000 in landscaping and maintenance for for us to take care of these plants and trees or whatever. And I again want to bring forward that there are some plants and trees appropriate and some that are not. I noticed just today when I was coming that the cactus plants in end of the Mary Barbara Bridge have been pulled up because they could not be maintained. And on the new planting on US 1, they have the thorn cactus there too. You just can't weed those. And so if we could ask them to eliminate that from we just can't keep those tidy. And some other trees that go barren during the winter, like crepe myrtle and others, they are sticks 2/3 of the time. So if we could have a list of something from them that they're going to put in and that we approve, how does this work?
Jim Davis, Public Works Director. We've met with Mr. Coulter, who is the landscape architect that's been retained by DOT to establish the plant pilot for the project. And I have that in my office if you'd like to take a look at it. But we have sent that to the Road and Bridge Division and to the Parks Division. And we have scrutinized that list of plants to make sure that they're plants that are good for this area. Some of these landscape architects are from further south in Florida, Miami, Fort Lauderdale area, and I don't know if some of them have a good feel for Indian River County. But we have met with them, and this particular landscape architect, is the one that designed the 4th Street US 1 project recently installed, and that seems to be a good project. But we have met with them on 2 occasions now, and we do have a plant pilot. And we will certainly take your comments about the cactus. I don't think there are any cactus on that plant pilot. And the crepe myrtle, we'll communicate that to them.
Okay.
They're using a lot of palms, and they're using some oaks. And
wonderful. That was my question. So they're raising
green grass and oaks.
Yeah, it's hard to go with a live oak. Will live a long time.
Yeah.
And it looks very nice whenever it's in the
because sometimes some of these are just stacked. They're too busy and stacked too many with plants, and it takes too much maintenance. We don't have a lot of maintenance people anyway to take care of what we have, much less what we're going to have. So I'm not criticizing. I'm just wanting to be ahead of this game. And if you could share that with me, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can we get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all signify by aye.
Aye.
Motion, any nays? Motion carries 5-0.
And this is number N is the agreement, interlocal agreement, and I'm not against it at all, but this is a huge amount of money, $7 million to $4 million, and this happened before our time, so I just wanted to be, before I pass this on a consent agenda, know a little bit about this.
Let me read that into this so everybody knows what we're talking about. That's approval of the interlocal agreement with the Sebastian Inlet District for the main relief canal pollution control, and that's a memorandum December 11, 2006, found on 80 and 88.
And it's the funding, and we're going to receive some funding.
Yes, under this agenda item, we're receiving funding from the Sebastian Inlet Tax District. They have a particular project they're trying to do in the Indian River Lagoon to maintain navigation at the Sebastian Inlet. As mitigation, they're funding $750,000 of the main canal pollution control system, which is a system to remove suspended solids and particulate matter from the discharge of the main relief canal that's owned by the Indian River Farms Water Control District. And in this project, there will be a series of bar screens to filter the water and to remove floatable solids which contain a lot of nitrogen and phosphorus that's entering into the lagoon and creating nitrification problems, and some of these particles settle over the seagrass beds. And it's a way to clean the water up prior to discharge into the lagoon, which is a benefit to the overall environmental quality of the lagoon. And the Sebastian Inlet Tax District's funding $750,000 as mitigation for some work that they're doing. And Marty Smithson is here with the Sebastian Inlet Tax Control District if you have any questions about their particular project. But it's a $4 million project. We do have other funding from grants, state grants, and we will be providing.
I just really wanted to ask the question. This is mitigation for dredging the
inlet.
Inlet, is
channel.
that correct? And when are you going to dredge the inlet? And do you have to mitigate first? I just really want to understand this.
Hi, Marty Smithson, Administrator, Sebastian Inlet District. We are pursuing permits to allow the dredging of the flood shoal that will complete our navigation channel to the Intercoastal Waterway. We're very close to receiving those permits, and the agencies, both the Corps of Engineers and DEP, allowed us to use stormwater improvement as part of our mitigation. And so that's where we wanted to enter into agreement with the county for this fine project on Main Relief Canal. Our dredging, we hope to take place in March of this year. So,
and how long will that take?
It's a 30-day dredging. It's 50,000 cubic yards that will be removed, and it will damage 1.65 acres of seagrass. And so that's why we're looking for these opportunities to make an improvement to seagrass in the lagoon to offset that damage.
Okay. Thank you very much for that knowledge.
Thank you.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0. Under public discussion items, we have a request to speak from Bermuda Club Homeowners Association regarding developer non-compliance with the county requirements found on pages 132.
Yes, I spoke with this lady last night, and she's going to postpone speaking today, and she might come back in January. We're going to meet with her in a few weeks.
Okay. Next item will be the request to speak from Joseph Palatin, Chairman of the Growth Awareness Committee regarding maintenance bonds, found on pages 133 to 140.
Good afternoon, Joseph Palatin, Chairman of the Growth Awareness Committee. A year or so ago, the Growth Awareness Committee was responsible for bringing forth several changes in LDR changes, and one of those changes was a bonding out, where we changed the bonding out to where you can't bond out until you're 75% done, and then you have to use a letter of credit. And then we went on to increase the length of a maintenance bond from 1 year to 3 years on roads, sidewalks, buffers, things like that, and it's still 1 year for underground. When we did that, I can tell you personally, and when we brought the changes forth on multiple family subdivisions, we never meant to eliminate multiple family or site over planned subdivision from not having a maintenance bond. We never considered it, and somehow we accidentally or overlooked the fact that we eliminated them from the maintenance bond process. And I would ask the county commission today to kind of bring forth the support to go ahead and advertise this and change that provision so that multiple family subdivisions and site over plan subdivisions weren't eliminated from the maintenance bond process. And secondly, while we're on the bonding issue, also, I probably made another error in the bonding out process when we set the standard of the bond for a maintenance bond. Previously, I had been involved in much larger bonds and much larger maintenance bond projects in other areas. And I didn't realize it'd be a problem when I researched the highest level of bonding service we could get was an A+11. So I set that standard so that we could not be dealing with lesser quality bonding companies, and I thought that was the best interest of the county. The error I made was in coming forward, the A+11 rating is only done through a reinsurance bond, which reinsures a bonding company, say of an A+6, which is a high bonding level, to bring it up to that level of service. It is impossible, or almost impossible, I would say it's impossible, to do this with a small bonding amount. In other words, the bond's under $150,000, under a couple $100,000. The reinsurance bond just isn't worth doing, so it's hard to upgrade that A+6 to A+11. So it makes the maintenance bond issue that we're on not really done correctly or fairly, and I take responsibility for that. Now, the one thought process that we did research is that if we were dealing with a different bonding company, it would make a difference. But that A+6 bonding company is the exact same bonding company that you would be addressing when you reinsured that bond to go to an A+11. So you're not dealing with a lesser quality bonding company. And I think we took the bonding out of the getting the project done. We need to get a maintenance bond policy in place that can make it possible to get these maintenance bonds. And even at the 3-year, we have to renew the 1 year for 3 years because you can't get a 3-year maintenance bond. So that would still stay in play. All this would stay in play. I'm asking that we don't eliminate multiple family. We don't eliminate site over, which would be the same thing. And we use the level of service or the rating of A+6 or even a 7, which is extremely hard to get in the maintenance bond issue, so we can actually use the maintenance bond. That's what I would ask the county commissioners to weigh and bring forth and change those two things.
Comments?
That makes sense to me. I mean, it sounds like we're asking Lloyd's of London to insure a class ring. And I don't believe that they, would put something like that forth. I think that you're looking at a project that we're asking above and beyond really what the industry accepts.
Right.
So it makes sense. But what I would like to talk to on the multifamily side, what's the ramifications? I don't see. I mean, I know why we did it for single family residential, but I don't understand. Was it intentionally left out to not have the multifamily dwellings bonded for their landscape?
Yeah, I'm Bob Keating. I'm County Community Development Director. Multifamily projects are a lot different from single-family projects. The reason that there is bonding out for the improvements for a single-family project is a developer can come in and actually create lots and sell those lots out there, and those lots are depending on the infrastructure. And therefore, in the past, applicants have been able to come in and bond out the infrastructure, get final plat approval, and sell the lots. The recent change that you made to now limiting that to when 75% of the improvements are done has been a big change. But the important part is the reason that there is bonding out for the improvements is to protect the buyers of the individual lots, and then maintenance security is required after that just to make sure that the improvements hold up. It's a lot different in multifamily because the buyer is actually buying a structure, a portion of a structure, and all the improvements have to be in at that time. And in multifamily, instead of dealing with roads and rights-of-ways and sidewalks, you're dealing with driving aisles and parking lots and pedestrian paths around there. I think the one common element is usually landscaping, but most of the components of a multifamily project and a plat over site plan, which is just laying a plat over a site plan project and in essence using, say, the common walls as lot lines so that a buyer can actually buy the dirt as well as a portion of the structure. What we look at is those improvements are significantly different from the improvements in a subdivision, and because all of the improvements need to be in place before the buyers can actually take possession of the lots, and there's a certificate of occupancy process associated with it, we don't see the need for bonding in those situations. And Stan, I think, may have some things to add.
Yeah, Stan Bowling, Planning Director. Just what Joe Paladin had prepared in the backup, I just wanted to, this is the ordinance as it was recently amended and adopted actually last year. And Joe, just to make sure, this is out of the subdivision ordinance, so you're talking about plat over site plan projects, not just site plan projects.
Yes.
Yeah, because these requirements are out of the platting and subdivision ordinance only, and the trigger for this 3-year maintenance bond is exactly what Joe's showing you here, and I highlighted here, certificate of completion. And so that's the trigger that's in the code right now, and a certificate of completion is required and used in a standard subdivision layout, where you have the streets in the right-of-way and then individual lots. There are some kinds of plat over site plan projects that lay out like that. Waterford Lakes on the south side of 12th Street is actually zone multifamily. They came in with a plat over site plan, and they have individual single-family units on essentially very small lots, but a standard street and road situation. That's where engineering has required a certificate of completion. I think Joe's concern is there are layouts like a standard, say, apartment complex, where you have driveways and parking areas that don't require a certificate of completion. So there's no trigger right now, no requirement for the maintenance bond. And I think the issue here is if we're going to require a maintenance bond in those situations, what really needs to be bonded? Is it the driveways? Is it the parking spaces? It's a different layout, so we'd have to look at what really needs to be covered. And the other issue I just wanted to bring up is that, and purposely so, what is covered in the maintenance bond is road, drainage, and sidewalk improvements. Landscaping is not covered in the 3-year maintenance bond, and the reason, and we went through all these discussions earlier when this was adopted, we found that landscape is installed with a 1-year guarantee. It's almost universal. We have a 1-year inspection period that we look at, and once landscaping is established, at that point we do code enforcement. But if it's in and it's established within a year, it seems to work. We haven't had problems with it. So those are that's why the ordinance is structured. That's the way the ordinance is structured now. So if changes are to be made, you kind of have to look at how it would apply to this different kind of layout.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
And looking at this, and I understand the difference between certificate of completion versus a certificate of occupancy. The way I would want to look at this is to help somebody from getting what I'd call the government runaround, if we could, and to look out for the little guy. And that is, in the instance of this, if we could have this policy in place whenever there is actually a property owner buying a unit versus a rental property. I think we have code enforcement to take care of the issues with rental properties, but then you have a situation where a townhome or condominium of some kind, if those issues don't live up to what they're supposed to for that time frame, then we have a little teeth again to hold the developer responsible, just like we would in a regular subdivision. So that's kind of where I would like to draw the line, if we could, and I don't know about my fellow commissioners. But we have code enforcement to take care of it on one side. The other side is, we tell them it's not a code enforcement issue, it's a legal issue, go get you an attorney, which is exactly what prompted this and predicated this whenever we started doing this for single-family residential development.
And if I could make a comment, and that's exactly why we went from 1 year to 3 years on the roads and sidewalks.
Right.
And the intent was to protect the county from being involved in cases where they had no teeth. So I would say my intent, I don't know about the county's intent, my intent was never to eliminate the other. And when we went ahead and included private roads as well as county roads or vice versa, we discussed all that. And that's why we included county and private roads. Doesn't matter whether you have a private road or a county road, you still had to take out the 3-year maintenance bond on that road and sidewalk and curbs and stuff like that. So I think that as far as distinguishing when you want to trigger that, that's not really a difficult item to come up with. I think that Bob, Stan, and myself can come up with that trigger point. But I wouldn't like to eliminate any type of subdivision from not having that 3-year period to where we have a phone call to make instead of trying to run somebody down and tell the people we have no control.
Well, I think the problem is, Mr. Chairman, is that whenever you call it a subdivision, what staff is saying is that whenever it's multifamily, it's not a subdivision, it's a site plan. And so you wouldn't be able to differentiate just based on the subdivision requirements. You'd have to differentiate, in my opinion, where I'd like to differentiate and draw the line is if it were a residential unit that was in fact being sold and you still have, and it's being sold instead of rented.
I would agree with that.
And I think the platting ordinance being the trigger here, that's going to cover most of those situations. Rental apartments don't tend to get platted. There's no reason for them to go through that. They plat to create the lots to sell them. The only cases where that might not be the case is the traditional kind of old school condominium situation where you don't actually create lots. But we don't tend to see those very much, not in the residential side anymore. You see it some in the commercial.
What happens when the apartment or the multifamily go to condos?
Well, that's right. That's exactly the issue. They would not come through the platting process in that particular case.
And not only that, it would be an established too. It wouldn't be new. I mean, and therefore you'd be able to see whether there was cracks, whether there was landscape, whether there was. I mean, I would think that's a little bit different because.
Yeah, that's entirely different. It'd be like buying a used house or something. A secondhand. A house is 10 years old. You wouldn't expect the county to be responsible for what you entered into a deal with on a project that's 10 years old. We're talking about new projects, and I think that.
Joe, I'd rather hear that than you. Yeah.
You might want to be careful of that, Wesley.
They could come in.
Yeah.
Kim, if you can hear me, have them come in. Kim? Catch them quick.
Joe, it might set the right tone. This could be a good thing.
Might be a good idea.
Yeah.
We know you're a patient man, Joe.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Did we catch them?
Yes.
Good.
I think they're coming into Carroll.
Absolutely.
All right.
This is what it's all about.
Yeah.
I want you to get this in your hearts as we go on here.
Come on in.
And Joe, what group is this? No.
This is the Paladin Rangers, actually.
Y'all come right down here. Come right here and stand in front if y'all.
We'd love to hear your Christmas carol.
Beachland. Singing Sharks.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Commissioners, these are the Beachland Shark Singers led by Miss Susie Reiser.
All right.
All right.
What a treat.
Wow, there's a lot of singing
Absolutely.
shirts.
Yeah. Joe, you have just been upstaged.
I think this room right here in front, if you want to come on around.
Some of you come on down front.
Wow.
Come on down. Yep.
Make a second row. Quickly, make a second row. Thank you.
This is so nice. This is so nice.
We are the Beachland Sharks, gliding through the sea of life, trying to do our best, doing what we know is right.
Thank you very much for coming and singing to us. That was very, very beautiful.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Good job.
Holidays, guys. Very nice. Thank you very much. Merry
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah. Just
okay, as the at-large commissioner, I'd like to make a motion.
Don't even go there. Now, just real quick, if I could, I'd like
to have them at every meeting.
I see some of the members from the Sebastian City Council, and I'd like to see y'all top that at one of your meetings. I don't think.
Henry, will they be included in tomorrow's report?
Okay.
All right, let's simplify it. If a road falls apart, or if a sidewalk cracks, or if a curb falls apart, or whatever the maintenance bond covers in a standard subdivision, what would you see as the difference between it happening in an RS3 subdivision, RS6 subdivision, or a multiple family townhome subdivision? Where would the responsibilities be different? I don't see the difference.
Joe, is there a difference in a rental property issue versus a fee simple?
Well, there's a difference as far as the responsibility. You don't have a land or home, or you don't have a land or home owner. That would be the difference in my heart, that you wouldn't have rental property. People that are renting apartments probably coming in here and complaining to the county commission that the project's only 2 years old and the roads and curbs and sidewalks are falling apart.
And that remedy would be more appropriately handled through the code enforcement?
Right.
That's kind of the way I was seeing
Yeah,
it.
but I just don't see the difference in responsibilities of a developer from selling a townhome community to selling an RS6 community. I just don't see the difference.
Bob?
Actually, there are a number of logistical issues that we have with this. First of all, I think county staff's getting inundated with bonds right now. It is time-consuming. It's difficult to deal with bonding. Particularly the attorney's office and public works are hit pretty hard by this. Another issue is with standard subdivisions, most of them bond out the construction. So we deal with a certified cost estimate early on, and then the maintenance bond is a % of that. What we're going to have to deal with in these cases of multifamily is the bond will have to be in place before a certificate of occupancy. And when a certificate of occupancy is about to be issued, there is a lot of scurrying around and a lot of last minute things being done. And at this time, engineering is going to have to approve a certified cost estimate for whatever we determine needs to be included. And as Stan indicated, is it going to be parking spaces or not parking spaces, driving aisles, whatever components, we're going to have to deal with getting a certified cost estimate, which is usually an iterative process. There's a back and forth between Public Works and the applicant. And I think that basically, I don't think we've had problems, I don't know if Stan knows, with multifamily projects with any of the infrastructure having a problem in the first 3 years, like we have had on some of the subdivision projects. So, well, what I'm just saying, it can be done. There are a lot of logistical problems, but I'm not sure the benefit-cost ratio was really high.
I guess really, I'm sorry.
I was just looking at it, really a cost of a quality of life issue, whether you rent or whether you buy. That there should be standards here. And why would you expect a developer, just because they chose to do multifamily or not to do, what they should do?
Mr. Chairman.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we bring back a report to you on this, and also the insurance, because if we're going to change the insurance requirements, let's look into it. We did it on the fly last time. We're going to do it on the fly again here, and we could make a mistake. So why don't we staff come back with the report in January, and then we discuss it, and we'll go over all the issues. I think that would be a better way. And also, if we're going to change the bonding requirement, let's make sure we do it right this time.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, and I think I'll just take this kind of out of abstract terms and put it in more real terms. There's been some residents at up in the Roseland community that's been looking at some condominiums going in. I won't mention any names, but you know exactly. And right now it's been more of a code enforcement issue, and the landscape is involved in that, and the buffer requirements. And I think that we kind of owe it to the residents that are being infringed upon by multifamily developments to give them the opportunity and make it as simple as we possibly can, not for this, just for this commission, but also for staff to see to it that they do what's not only right, but what's also expected in the codes. And so I agree with what Mr. Barrett has said, to give staff some time, but I don't know if you need a vote from staff to say, yes, we're kind of in favor of something like this and y'all come back, or if it's pretty evident that of where we're leaning with this.
And the numbers, what are we really looking at? How vast a situation is this?
What do you mean by the numbers?
Projects.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, Bob would have
just if we can get a motion.
I can give you one, but that wouldn't be affected by it. But I'd feel better going forward with the issues.
A motion, Wesley.
I move that we have staff come back and give us some recommendations on how we can implement this into our multifamily.
But, all those engineering estimates and stuff is what we have to do to get a maintenance bond on the subdivision anyway. We have to get an engineering certification of cost factors. We have to bring all that in and get it approved by the county, get the county to sign off. Then we have to go find a bonding company to write the bond. So it's things we're doing now. So if you're doing it for regular subdivisions, I just don't see where you'd want to eliminate multiple family from it. If you want to do that, then make it equal and don't do it anywhere. I mean, why would you do it for one and not the other? It just doesn't make any sense.
And have them come back in the January 8th meeting.
Commissioner Davis, I would also like to include a legal application review as well.
Of the bonding issue?
Of the bonding issue.
Right.
So we can make it all inclusive.
Right.
At that time.
Yes, sir.
That's accepted to my amendment, or to my motion.
Do you have a second yet? We have a second yet?
Second your motion.
Second. Okay, we have a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Mr. Commissioner, or Mr. Chairman, could I ask a question while I'm up here? Mr. Fletcher, one of your commissioners, I don't know what the proper timing would be during the meeting, but it'd just take a moment. Would it be okay? Mr. Fletcher, you were alluding to something about the county attorney's office at the end of what, this has nothing to do with Mrs. Bowden's motion. I agree with that 100%. I support that 100%, and I commend her for bringing it forward. But you were alluding to maybe a fill-in position, a temporary position, maybe using some of our own talent that we have available. We have a long time between now and the next meeting, so I just felt in the best interest of the county and what you were trying to say to bring it forward, because I don't think it was clear. Would Mr. Chairman mind if Mr. Fletcher commented on that?
No, I understood by the chairman that we were going to be revisiting that at a later time, that Commissioner Bowden's motion was separate and not inclusive of the absence that has been now confronted us with Mr. Collins' sojourn leave of absence.
Okay.
I do have a concern. I think that we need to ensure that we have a full legal staff, and since we do have an attorney on staff that is fully familiar with all of our endeavors at this point, he's pretty much up to speed. I would like to see or entertain a motion that we move Mr. Zito from his current position and have him perform the task of general counsel in the sojourn absence of Mr. Collins.
Well, that would have to be asked of Mr. Baird, because this is his employee.
And I most certainly am asking him for his input.
What you're asking for is someone to be in acting capacity to manage the attorney's office, and would Mike be? I wouldn't have a problem with Mike's familiar with. I wouldn't have a problem moving Mike over. He couldn't work. Of course, he'd be working in acting capacity. He wouldn't be working for me. He'd be working at the board's direction. That way you don't have to go out and hire. I wouldn't have a problem with that. I think you've got a lot more legal issues confronting you right now than the other issues. And
that wouldn't be in lieu of. Commissioner?
No.
That's why I raised it when
Okay.
Mr. Bowden was making a motion.
This would be absolutely separate from Mrs. Bowden's motion.
I'm not ready to make that decision here.
This wasn't on the agenda. Nobody's had any input into that. I know I've been talking with Mr. DeBall and with Marion and back and forth and trying to figure out exactly where we are at this point, and that's a work in process. But this is something that I think by the first meeting in January we'll have a better idea where we're going, and we can address it at that time. But it wasn't an agenda item. None of the public's aware of it or anything else, and I would be opposed to having calling a question on this.
And I didn't mean to blindside you with that. I just wanted to bring it forward because I would support that, by the way.
Well, and I totally missed it. And that was even.
I just wanted to ensure that we were not looking at a replacement as opposed to an addition to staff.
No, in fact, I think our legal staff, quite frankly, has been undermanned for a couple of years. And I've talked to Will probably a year and a half ago, and I believe his intentions, and I don't want to speak for Will, but his intentions are to add an additional attorney when we move into the new building where we have office space for him. And I think that's needed. I know, at least from my perspective, we are a whole lot busier now than when I was on this commission before, and we were bouncing, I think, between 4 and 5 attorneys, 1 part-time and 4 full-time. And and we've got a lot more problems and a lot less staff today. So.
And we've probably got a lot more coming up, so it's probably a good idea.
But I think that's something that probably by the first meeting in January we'll have an idea and we can make a decision on where to go with that. If that's
Mr.
okay.
Chairman, just for Marion and Bill, do you both feel confident that you can divide the workload for the next several weeks until
Yes.
January, and
Yes,
that
Commissioner,
you
yes.
two are working things out and everything's moving smoothly?
Yes, Commissioner, we are, because we, earlier today, you directed us to seek additional attorney, which we will. We're already working on that. We had candidly started discussing that last week when we had the staff meeting with our county attorney.
Okay.
We each have different, there are 2 attorneys, and we have an excellent support staff. Combined, our support staff has been there for over 60 years. The 2 of us have been practicing law for quite some time. We have different areas of expertise, and we're quite competent in those areas, because the job of our office, including, of course, Mr. Collins, is to provide you with the best possible legal representation.
Okay. And Bill, you're comfortable as well?
Yes, I look at this as similar to someone getting the flu and being out of the office. I don't want to pick on Mr. Keating, but heaven forbid he would become ill and be missed from the community development department for a week or 2. But I mean, the staff would go right along and function.
I think that we come back after the first of the year and we look at the whole issue and move
Mr.
forward.
Chairman, I look at that a little different, and just because Mr. Keating works.
Excuse me.
Okay?
I think so. Thanks to Wesley. I think
Talk about being sick and out for a month now, gee.
I know. And
Mr. Keating works for Mr. Baird, and that's his responsibility. You do not work for us.
Yes.
And no one was left in charge. And so this is a different issue. And
I understand.
I have some concerns here, and that our job and responsibility is not really to ask them what they think. That is Will's job, or whoever the head attorney is. We only deal with
3 people.
3 people. And that was my point here, and that this is crucial, and that we want the quality to stay as it has been and move forward.
And thank you for the comments. And like we said, we've been in contact with Chairman Wheeler, and we will continue to keep in contact with him and let him know what's going on.
Okay, but he's just one person, and we only speak as a majority up here.
And
that's correct. Absolutely correct.
Thank you, Chairman, for your time.
Thank you. We're going to take an early break. We'll come back to community development. We have to break for our captioning. Thank you.
Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment.
And the first item on the agenda is a request to modify the county's local economic development incentives, memorandum dated December 11, 2006, found on pages 141 through 154.
Mr. Chairman, recently the Economic Development Council, which is in essence your Economic Development Committee, has been working with staff and looking at the county's economic development incentives. And as a result of that analysis, the EDC has recommended several changes to economic development incentives, and staff supports most of them. There's one that staff doesn't support, and just recently we were contacted by the chairman of the EDC, and he suggested that that one proposed change be tabled right now, not considered today, and brought back at another time, and that relates to impact fee financing. The other incentives that we have here are really not significant in the big picture. It involves some changes to our jobs grant program, which will reduce the threshold, the minimum number of jobs from 10 to 5 to qualify for job grants program. It also involves changing the classification system to go to the North American Industrial Classification System from the SIC, the Standard Industrial Classification. That's a change that the county's made to the economic development element of its comp plan, and we just needed to make that change to our list of incentives. Also, we're proposing changes to the job grant program, which gives a little more job grant funding incentive for any businesses that locate in the enterprise zone. There's a 20% extra amount per job, and there's an allowance to go over the maximum of $500,000 per company. And then finally, there's a proposed change to the utility deposit incentive we have, increasing the amount from $5,000 to $10,000. As I said, the chairman of the EDC has requested that we not consider the impact fee financing incentive change today, and based on his request, staff supports that, and we would come back separately at that time. Staff has reviewed all of these changes to the incentives. We have worked with EDC, and we do support these. As part of your backup, there is an attachment to your agenda item that lists the jobs grant programs, and it shows these changes in strike through and underline. Penny Chandler and Helene Castletine are here from the chamber, and they may want to speak to this, but staff recommends your approval.
Anybody have questions of staff?
No. What would be the financial implications? I see the 20% bonus for each targeted job business brings to the enterprise zone. Does that include businesses that are already there also, or is that just new?
No, it could be an expansion of an existing business, yes.
Okay.
It would have to be an expansion, though.
Yes, and new jobs created, yes.
Okay. I don't know, and this might be an elephant to eat for a different day and make the impact fee issue sound easy. Just understanding some businesses that are in the enterprise zone, and it's not anything atypical, I suppose, to what the homeowner's going through. But I've heard issues of insurance jumping from $400,000 to $4 million in a short time frame. And that's almost enough to run anybody anywhere other than here. And I don't know if there's something that we can do, if there's something the state's doing that we need to as a county to help fall in line with. I don't have the answer. I just know there's an issue that I'm hearing.
With insurance?
Yes.
I think we discussed at the legislative delegation that there should be more of a push for commercial. We're hearing a lot of commercial businesses, especially if they've got metal buildings. Their insurance has gone through the roof, but I think that's going to all have to be handled at the state level, and we need to stay on top and encourage our legislators. Also, another thing is we could maybe lobby on the federal level. You know, there's national flood insurance. Maybe there should be national crisis insurance, so that when you have a hurricane in the south, maybe we could lobby for a federal program to help areas like ours and come up with a program for when there is a crisis like there was a few years ago with our two hurricanes.
I think we need to move on that fast. I think that, if you can go 100 miles inland and manufacture the same product, tap into virtually the same or equivalent staff individuals, it's going to cost us. It's going to cost us bad, and as a coastal community, we're really paying the price for being a coastal community. And it scares me tremendously for the businesses that may relocate because of this very issue. And it's not in front of us here, and I know that's a debate for a different day, but it's not a debate that can wait.
I know that's a priority, not only for the League of Cities and Counties, I believe. I know the counties. Also with the legislature, the new governor, the whole focus seems to be, or one of the main focuses seems to be, in the upcoming session is going to be insurance. And I also know during the campaign, listening to some of the governor's candidates, it was an issue. It was right up front. So it is a problem. That and our tax situation. Those are two major problems that are going to hurt development in this.
I've heard all kind of solutions for the tax issue, but just the one for, I didn't say they were going to be implemented, but just solutions on the tax side. But there's really this insurance issue is huge.
Well, yeah, and I agree, and I think with the accolades that were given to the legislative delegation for the proposed cap, I think we need to do something, but I don't think that's the answer. It needs to be done statewide, and they need to figure out a better way to solve that problem. But that's with the tax problem I have. Is there anything else, Wesley? No. Any other questions? Yes.
I'd like a explanation, please, on page 148, waiving county utility deposits.
138?
No.
148.
148. There's some cross out and some new language here on these 3 bullets. Can I have an explanation on that?
Well, I think they're going to waive deposits.
And pay electric and water?
No, actually, this is an existing economic development incentive that we have in right now, and we have it capped at $5,000. There was discussion at EDC meetings about trying to also cover deposits for City of Vero Beach Electric and some of the other utility companies, but the way it was left, it's still county water and sewer that's covered, but the total amount that can be waived is up to $10,000 instead of $5,000.
You know, we may want to be careful with our economic development, because if they put us a cap on our spending, we're going to have to appropriate money, and we might not be able to with that cap on our budget going up that the state legislators think so great. Because what that does is that rewards the counties that haven't been conservative, like Indian River County, that have higher budgets. So they're starting at a higher number percentage-wise. It doesn't work. It does the opposite. And, you know, these incentives could be an additional expense to me, and if they put a cap on, we may want to be careful.
Yes.
It's starting.
I'm sorry.
It says included on the county's target industries list. Would that be an industry that's already here? If they were having a difficult season, a difficult year, whatever, that we would possibly pick up their bill for water and, is it water and sewer?
No, actually, it could be for a new business or an existing business that's expanding and adding employees. And what we're doing is we're not paying their bill. Essentially, we're just covering their deposit. In case they can't pay their bill, that would be the only time that would be out-of-pocket funds. And the company and the types of businesses that are on the county's target industry list are generally basic types of industries.
Well, what does this mean then? Sorry.
Oh.
Instead of paying the deposit amounts up front, the county will pledge funds that may be drawn upon when necessary. What does that mean?
Generally, a new business coming in and getting water and sewer from the county would have to pay a deposit to make sure that if it reneged on its bill, it would.
I got that.
Okay. Well, what the county is going to do through this is, unlike a business where they would actually write a check, say, for a $5,000 deposit, the county is going to tell the utilities department, we're good for it.
Well, what does may be drawn upon mean?
That would mean if this company went out of business and they hadn't paid their bills, the county would have the county would reimburse the utility enterprise fund from another source.
Well, that's what I want
yes.
to know. That's
yes.
So if City of Vero Beach is getting money through their electric utility from all these customers and they're within their area, why wouldn't they want to waive the deposit themselves and be part of the partnership and buy in?
Well,
I think that would be a fair proposal.
We give for the homeowner, I don't know if we do for business, the city did, within 3 years, we return the deposit. Do we do that for water and sewer, for businesses?
Yes, we do for individuals. I know we return.
You're required to return it after 3 years. Do we do it for businesses?
Yes, I think so. Am I correct, Eric?
Okay, Wesley, did you have something?
For residential only.
I'm sorry.
Residential only.
We done, Sanders?
Right now.
Okay, Wesley.
See, mine's more in total at the very end, I suppose, than something individually, so we'll keep going.
Okay, Peter, did you want to say something? Then I've got some questions.
On this issue, what happened was this was an incentive that we already had. The problem we had was we had people going into the city of Vero Beach, and they didn't give them any incentive. So we did request, the member on our committee from the city to go back to the city and see if we couldn't get that also offered as an incentive. Secondly, I think that if you check this, there is a requirement that they have to have a good history.
Yes.
They have to have a good history and have good credit. So the only thing we're doing is, instead of saying, hey, you got to give us the $5,000 up front while you're moving your company here and going through all that expense, we're just saying, you don't have to give us that, but then somebody in the committee said, probably a guy like Joe said, well, but you got to set some money aside. So that's the reason they put in the wording about.
And it's $10,000 now.
Yeah,
not the
that's
$5,000.
the reason they put the wording in about you'd have to set the money aside. But you're dealing with people who have good credit, and you probably should never have to call on it. It's just an incentive that says you don't have to put the $10,000 out right now when you're moving your company here, so please come over here and bring us some jobs.
So do we put that money in escrow, or do we really set it aside, or do we have a limited amount of money we can set aside?
We're basically acting as the guarantor, that if those funds ever need to be drawn on, the hope is that in most cases there would never be the need to do that, so we don't set the money aside per se individually for each one. However, if a company went out of business and defaulted on this, the county would have to make that up out of general fund dollars.
And that's one of the questions. I would assume that it would probably come out of contingency. You wouldn't have a special account set aside. But the other thing is the reason for this, it says the change will increase the county's ability to cover deposit requirements for large target industries, and thereby allow the county utility waiver program to remain in effect for local economic development incentives. But if they're large companies that are coming in, I can't imagine that $5,000 or $10,000 is going to make a difference. The other thing is what I've seen not only with county governments and state governments and the federal government, but and I realize the rationale is to create jobs, but it seems like we only subsidize multi-million or multi-billion-dollar corporations. Small businesses are out of the picture, and I have a concern about that. It's just like basically we subsidized to some degree, if you want to look at it that way, the Dodgers, and that's just one local example. I don't know that that's one problem I have with it. The other thing is reducing this down to 5 from 10, and before that it was 20. And we just keep reducing our standards. And perhaps another solution may be to try to reach out farther and cast a wider net, so to speak, as to who would be interested here. And I know I see her up ready to speak, Ms. Casterline. But I know I took the tour a year or so ago to the businesses that have moved in here, and most of those are small businesses, and most of them have very good jobs available, and most of them came here because their CEO came here, apparently liked Vero Beach and said, I want to move my company there. And I kind of like to have people come here that want to come here. I don't like getting in a bidding war with other counties and saying, no, we'll offer you more freebies than the other ones so we can get you here. I'd kind of like to get people to come here that actually want to live here and be good citizens, rather than just moving in and taking. And I've seen this happen in the Northeast, quite frankly. That's why I'm a little sensitive about it. I've seen the Northeast when I was a young man making all kinds of incentives and tax breaks, and companies move in, and 10 and 20 years later, when those breaks are up, they move and go someplace else where there's more breaks. And it may have been nice, but what you really remember is the suffering when they close up and leave town. And it creates problems. So I have a little bit of a problem with an incentive program to boot. The other thing that we have a problem in Florida is Wesley and Joe, and we've all mentioned, but is not only insurance but taxes. And I think that's one of the reasons, maybe a minor reason, maybe a major reason, that we're not getting applicants for this. And the other thing I want to ask Joe is, what accounts, what areas does the money come from, Joe, that handles this?
This would be definitely general fund contingencies. This is a general governmental expense.
So this comes out of ad valorem?
Yes.
Okay. And I agree with the lien holder. I had a problem with that also, as subordinating to the person, to the bank. Yes. Colleen?
May I?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you, Commissioners. Good morning. Helene Castletine, Director of Economic Development with the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce. I would like to address a couple of issues of concern. In these programs, we have had 2 companies utilize the local jobs grant program. One is a company called AeroShade that created 12 jobs. So it is a very small company. They are still in that process. The other is a company, a high-tech company called Extreme Systems that was also awarded a QTI at the state level, the Qualified Targeted Industry Program. They currently have about 40 employees. They are hoping to grow to about 250 employees at some point in the near future. But yes, we too like to see those smaller companies moving into our community. That's kind of our niche, actually. And the bottom line is to create a favorable environment for those small companies to grow within our local marketplace, hire local residents to fill those new jobs that are being created as a result. So that's kind of the point of this process, was to lower that job threshold, not just because we only want small 5-person companies, but we'd like to see them grow within our local marketplace, and creating that favorable environment, we're hoping would do that. So we would appreciate your consideration.
The other thing I might add too is incentive. I would be more willing to spend money to keep somebody here than to bring somebody here. And the rumor all about town is that Piper's considering leaving. I've heard that rumor over and over on the street. And I don't know, I haven't talked to them, but I intend to call them and see if I can find out what's happening and what's rumor and what's not. But that's a major industry that's been here. In fact, when I'm out traveling and I talk to people, I've always said our claim to fame here is Piper Aircraft, the LA Dodgers, and Indian River Citrus Fruit. And it seems like next year I'll be able to say we don't have any claim to fame in our county other than, and it's too bad, but if there was something we could do, and I don't know if the Chamber's working with Piper now or what's happening, all I know is rumors.
Right.
But that's something I'd really be willing to look at, is to keep an employer here that, and I know 30 years ago when Piper laid people off, this town shut down. And basically, I mean, the economy just went way low, and that they don't have that effect today, but they're still an important part of this community. So.
Mr. Grant, if I could
yes, absolutely.
Add to that, we are working very closely with our partners at Enterprise Florida and with Piper Management. In fact, we are looking to schedule a meeting probably at the end of January to work with them for the new facility that they're proposing for the Piper Jet.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I have met with Piper also. I met with the Piper representatives a few weeks ago, and they assured us that those are just rumors at this point. They don't know what they're going to do with their new jet facility, but at this point they're just rumors, and we did have a very good dialogue, and Helene and I have also been talking.
And Mr. Chairman, I hope when we get this meet that you'd be involved with that as well. We'd like
I'd love
for you to be
invited. Thank you.
And if I might mention too, as far as the incentive game goes, it's to be very, very honest, very blunt, what we have in Indian River County and actually what the state of Florida offers in terms of incentives really don't compare to what some of the other states are offering. And, you may or may not agree with what they're doing, North Carolina, Texas, Alabama, but oftentimes Florida can't even compete when we're looking at companies that are locating elsewhere. So it's a major concern.
Well, and it's been a huge problem for California because of what's happening. I mean, a lot of them are moving. I know companies that I've dealt with that have moved to Alabama and the kind of the central Sun Belt west because of they can get great employees with good work ethic for 30-40% less than they're paying hourly in California for people, and manufacturing companies and companies are moving there because of that. So, but
and Mr. Chairman, you're absolutely correct in retaining companies. That is absolutely crucial in the whole economic development process, is retaining our local companies. As exciting as it is to recruit a new company, to keep our local companies happy in our local marketplace is absolutely crucial.
Well, and that's a marketing tool. I mean, you subscribe to the newspaper, and your bill comes next, or a magazine, or almost anything else. You subscribe to this, and next year your bill comes due, and they want X number of dollars, but if you're a new subscriber, you can get it for half that. And oftentimes, I think of the marketing thing, they forget about their customer base because they're too focused on trying to expand it, and they end up losing customers. So, I thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have had the opportunity to do a little bit of talking with Helene on this Piper issue, and I have made some phone calls. I've called to Mr. Bass's office, talked to his assistant to find out who would be the person to speak to. I was referred to, I believe it's Mr. Johnston, if I'm not mistaken, and just so happens, or just by chance, had the opportunity to talk to a Mr. Clayton. Just met him out while he was out at dinner one night. And speaking with these individuals, I believe Mr. Clayton is the project developer, something, I believe is I forgive me on his title, but anyhow, basically in charge of project development for the Piper jet. And interestingly enough, what I found and learned in this whole process is you have the Honda jet that Piper kind of had, from what I understand, had a little bit of dealings with. That's about a $4 million jet. Then you have the Piper jet, which is about a $2.5 million jet, and then you have Piper's prop plane. And in effect, what we're looking at, quite possibly, is none of these planes competing against each other, none of these aircraft competing against each other in the marketplace. And where I envision, and where I'd like to see us go, is to try to aggressively roll up our sleeves and not just keep Piper here, but encourage them to build their $2.5 million jet here, and then to build their $4 million jet here. And that was kind of my question that I had of Helene in this is, not just, we might not be able to compete with other states, but I would like to know what kind of, when you look at this economic package, there's other enterprise zones in the state of Florida. I'd like to know what they're offering. I'd like to know where we sit and where we rank with them. And the reason why I say that is we've had probably a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity with the double-digit unemployment right after the hurricane to help us implement this enterprise zone strategy. Brilliant. And nice job for seizing that opportunity. But I think it's very important for this commission, or personally, as a commissioner, I won't speak for this commission, I would like to see us get aggressive, because I would venture to say where they build their $2 million jet, quite possibly may be where they build their Malibu, which is their prop plane. And I don't want to be as much reactive as I am proactive as a commissioner in trying to be able to get these jobs here. And the reason why I say that is I'm not in this community, and I'm not retired in this community. I'm working in this community. My wife and I are opening up a small business, and the response for simple minimum wage jobs has been absolutely incredible. And this not just because of Christmas money. I mean, these are people that are driving to St. Lucie County down to QVC. They'd like to have something local. I've had many friends had the opportunity to live the American dream by working at Piper, because it is a decent wage, and to actually buy their own place. And I'd like to see that have the opportunity to be expanded. And so I appreciate what we have in front of us. I'd like to go ahead and approve this and move forward, but I'd also like some kind of resolution from this commission as far as to say, yes, we want not just to keep Piper here, but we want to encourage Piper to build their other aircraft here.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to encourage jobs for sure here, and want to do everything we can to get good jobs and sustaining jobs. When you talk about an airport, we're all in a jet industry. We are all live next to the airport when you start taking off on these runways. And that's a whole nother issue that I don't really think we have the expertise to get into right now. Jets and manufacturing of jets here. The whole barrier island is under the flight path just about, and so is a lot of other things, and there will have to be some retro action probably of homes near the airport for runways. So that's another conversation at another time, but I certainly would like the prop planes and other things like that, but want to know the ramifications of
I would think, I happen to be a pilot, and I can tell you that the Malibu, which is tested here and flies out of here, is a jet. It's a turbine, it's a prop, but it's a jet. And small jets don't make near the noise that big jets make taking off.
Well, it depends on which small jets you talk about.
Well, I'm talking
The
about...
old-time ones still fly, some of them, and they do make, and there are hot dog people that fly over, you know, a lot. And we've had a Navajo, which is a wonderful Piper plane. And so I'm absolutely for Piper planes and this, that, and the other. But before we talk about building jets here and testing jets here, I'd like to know the whole program.
Well, I think that can certainly happen, but I can tell you, based on what I know, I would be tickled to death to have them build jets here. And the noise coming from jets are from big jets. The small jets don't have near the noise that big jets do. And you don't usually find hot dog pilots flying jets unless they're military, flying F-18s.
I would invite you to my house on a Sunday afternoon. When they come in to play golf and they leave, and they're a lot. And I don't want to get into this now, but I have you know, a lot of statistics on this.
Well, I think as far as and I agree, we don't
And we
need to
do
get
have a
into it.
noise issue at the
But
airport.
I can tell you, the airport's been here longer than most houses. And it's a vital part of this community or any community, just as the railroad is.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying we have
interstates.
a noise issue with jets, period, and that needs to be mitigated.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
As liaison to the Economic Development Council, I did participate in this meeting when we reviewed these incentive changes. I just want to, this isn't an end-all. It's not designed to be the answer to every business opportunity. It is designed to be a package of carrots to help entice a business here. So each item here is not in and among itself going to make a business move here, but as a total package, along with our quality of life and the other things we have to offer here, is intended to bring a business here. As far as the county utility deposit, we're actually increasing the waiver that the county is offering from $5,000 to $10,000. So we're actually increasing that waiver, which will greatly benefit a small business. So that means instead of having to put up to $10,000 into escrow, that $10,000 is now available to that small business for capital improvements or to buy equipment, things like that. So that particular waiver will greatly benefit a small business that doesn't have deep pockets. So I just wanted to clarify that. But having said all that, what I'd like to do is make a motion that we approve the changes to the economic development incentives with the tabling of the impact fee financing program.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any further discussion?
Could we have perhaps a timeline to report back how these incentives are working, and if they need to be adjusted up or down?
I'll be glad to do that. I'll be going to the monthly meetings, and I can keep the board updated on.
Can you issue a report at some point to keep us monitored?
And Mr. Chairman, if I may ask of Commissioner O'Brien, at the meeting also, if we could, I really do think that we need to look at just where we stand as far as how other communities' enterprise zones are stacking up against ours.
And I do agree that I'd like to put, if there's room for emphasis on those businesses already here. Yeah, and to give us that part of the report too, because this doesn't really exactly reflect what we have been able to accomplish in that area.
We can do that, certainly.
Mr. Johnson?
Bob Johnson, Corwin Subdivision. Is it my understanding that this is only for the enterprise zone that we approved? This is for the county?
No, the enterprise zone is a special 20% bonus in addition to this if you locate in the enterprise zone, but this includes countywide.
So I think this initiative may be a little premature because we haven't really found out what the impact would be on the recent vote of the enterprise zone. And that the purpose of the enterprise zone in itself was to provide incentives for small business and so forth in a area of the county which needed that kind of incentive. So I think this may be a little premature, and I think there may not be enough statistics as to how that effort is going about. Do we know how the enterprise zone, whether that's been effective yet or not? How much new business has been drawn into the enterprise zone? And I guess since this is going to be countywide, I'd like to know how much my taxes are going to be increased because of this effort too, since nobody's really given us a presentation or told us what the impact would be.
Nothing there has changed. They've simply changed the number from 10 down to 5, and the possibility of up to $10,000 waiving a deposit.
So this is an existing economic development incentive program that we have already in place. These are just some modifications to that existing plan.
Well, as you recall, several years ago, the taxpayers voted to not use tax dollars for incentives for businesses to come into Indian River County, and I wondered is this possibly violating that resolution that was made by the voters? No. Anyway, hopefully this will not increase the ad valorem tax, and I agree with Joe. I think it's a little premature because of what's going on in Tallahassee. They may put a freeze on spending. So anyway, that's just my comments.
Actually, I think these incentives will be minimal change from what we have when you look at them, and we haven't had much success in attracting industries using the incentives maybe. So I think it'll be minimal, but it's just an additional thing when we're facing a cap. And the voters did not vote to not have incentives. They didn't vote. That was not the vote at all. It was
right. The vote. There were 2 referendums on property tax abatement, and to have property tax abatement as an economic development incentive, the voters need to approve it, and they didn't approve it the 2 times that it was on the ballot, but that issue didn't address incentives generally. It was limited just to property tax abatement.
Yeah, and I appreciate Mr. Johnson's remarks, because it's not often we get accused of being premature as government in general. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I could address a couple of the concerns that were just voiced. The enterprise zone is, as you all know, an economically disadvantaged area of the county. It's a 4.5 square mile area. These incentives, as was explained, are countywide with special emphasis for projects that are locating in the enterprise zone. And in answer to Commissioner Davis, oftentimes counties that do have enterprise zones in Florida do put special emphasis on projects that locate in an enterprise zone because of the reason of their existence. So, and our zone has only been in place for a year. It's just been, it was October 05 is when we were designated. But I will tell you that we've had 19 applications, requests for sales tax refunds. So it's been extremely active in its first year of existence.
And the enterprise zone, just keep in mind, that is a state program.
It is a state program.
The county can take advantage of if it meets the criteria.
Correct.
This is a county program that is just an overlay countywide.
Yeah, and I would think that the incentive would be, if you were new business coming into town anyway, would be to be in the enterprise zone because of what's already offered.
Sure.
Correct. And I will tell you that those obviously they're existing companies that have taken advantage of the enterprise zone, and in fact, of those 19 applications, 10 came from Piper Aircraft.
Yes. Yeah.
So they were very pleased.
I think it was helpful with the hurricane damage and sales tax, and I don't know, millions of dollars worth of damage.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I would support the motion that's on the floor. I think we need to adopt any incentive we can possibly adopt as reasonable without costing the taxpayer money, because we certainly need more jobs in the area. And the more balanced economy that we can bring forth, the less that we'll be forced to be dependent on just one leg or 2 legs. We need that 3-legged stool. And just to be dependent on construction or citrus, you can see the problem we're in right now. So I think we really need to look into these incentives and bring in jobs into the area. And if you want to see your taxes go up. I think if you have businesses going out of business and people leaving the area, I think that you'll see a serious increase in your taxes. So it's in all of our best interest to support new, stable, clean industry coming into the area, and I'd make that a primary issue. And the second, that on Piper Aircraft, I don't think we can start fast enough. I don't think we can move fast enough. I think we need to post haste, get something going, and let these people know that we consider them a part of our community, and we want them to stay here as a part of our community, and we'll do whatever we can possibly do to benefit the people in this community as well as Piper Aircraft. And I'd do anything I could do to be a part of that. So I would tell you, Wesley, that I think that's a good idea, and Commissioners, I think that's an excellent idea to pursue that immediately. Thank you.
Sure,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
Holly?
If I may, if you don't mind. I would just, for the record, I would like to let you all know as Commissioners and the public that we have been working with the management team at Piper Aircraft for some time now. Earlier this year, this past March, we had the president of Enterprise Florida and his vice president to come in and sit with the CEO and have a one-on-one and voice their concerns, what they need, what they'd like to see. It was a very informative meeting, I will tell you that. And we've also been in contact, constant communication with them about the proposed facility for the new Piper Jet. We are talking with, I facilitated a call for the governor, working with OTED, the Office of Trade, Tourism, and Economic Development, and Governor Bush called the CEO, called Mr. Bass to talk to him, to let him know that we'd like for him to stay, we'd like for that new facility to come to Florida. So we are working with them, and we continue to work with them.
Well, he's on my list of things to call, so I'll wait to hear from you and go through that channel to talk to him.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I understand that you have a pretty close relationship with the governor-elect. In fact, if it might not be a bad idea, Mr. Chairman, if you wouldn't mind, I don't know whether you want a resolution from this board or something, but to have the governor-elect give Piper a call, because clearly we've got a lame duck governor leaving, and the governor-elect giving them a call saying, you know, we'd certainly like to have you stay in Florida, and let the governor do what he can at that level, and then the commission pick it up from there. But that's just a suggestion on a personal note from me to you.
Thank you. We'll, yeah, I'll see what we can do in that area.
Do we have a motion for this one?
We have a motion, we have a second. And any further discussion from the commission? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries 5-0. And next is emergency services, request from the Sebastian Police Department for public safety answering point, and memorandum dated December 12, 2006, found on pages 155 through 169. And I apologize for making half the city of Sebastian wait, but you were our audience today. We had to keep you here.
Y'all can sing to us.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is John King, Director of Emergency Services. In June of this year, the Board of County Commissioners denied a request from the Sebastian Police Department for authorization to create a new 911 public safety answering point. It was a very lengthy meeting, and in the backup, I provided a great deal of information from that meeting. And the City of Sebastian is now requesting the Board to reconsider their position of June of this year. And with that, I'd like to introduce Sebastian Police Chief Jim Davis.
Welcome, Chief.
Thank you.
Chief.
I give you about a 10-minute version of a 20-minute presentation, so in the interest of brevity. We tried this earlier in the year, and in your backup material, Director King has outlined the outcome of that meeting. And I would like to try it one more time just to see if we can sway your minds. But in the early years, there were two police dispatch centers in Indian River County, the Vero Beach PD and the Indian River County Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff's Office dispatched for everyone in the county except Vero Police Department. In the early 80s, the 911 system was implemented. Both dispatch centers in the county were set up to receive 911 calls. By the late 80s, Sebastian had grown to a point that they needed their own police dispatch center. However, the 911 calls were still answered by the sheriff's office and transferred to the Sebastian Police Department. At that time, the police department was located in a mobile home, and it was cramped for space and lacked security. In the late 90s, the city, with assistance from the International Association of Chiefs of Police, evaluated their dispatch system and determined that it needed improvement. Consolidation of the dispatch centers was an option. The city of Sebastian, at a public hearing, decided to retain their own dispatch center. The final recommendation of the International Chiefs of Police report was that if Sebastian decided against consolidation, it should consider securing its own 911 answering point. Since that decision, the dispatch staff has been increased, a new storm-hardened dispatch center has been constructed, a new dispatch equipment has been purchased, and dispatchers have received training on a new CAD system, a computer-aided dispatch system. The need for a PSAP, or public safety answering point, is demonstrated by the increasing number of calls being transferred from the sheriff's office. We have received 3,311 transferred 911 calls through November 30th of this year. The sheriff's office is a very busy place, and some of our 911 calls get stacked along with the county calls before being transferred to Sebastian. And let me clarify that life-threatening calls are not stacked. They receive top priority. However, while Sebastian can usually respond immediately to any 911 call, the delay in us receiving that information diminishes our ability to answer calls in a timely manner. When given the opportunity, our officers, who are trained as first responders, respond to medical and fire calls within our city. Our officers are equipped with automatic electronic defibrillators and have been credited with saving several lives. The sheriff's office does not pass fire or EMS calls on to us. Our dispatchers monitor the SO radio and send our officers only when they are lucky enough to hear the call. If Sebastian is allowed to have their own 911 center, fire and EMS would be transferred to the county. However, Sebastian police officers would also respond and be on location within 3 minutes. That's an average to all emergency calls in the city of Sebastian. To the best of our knowledge, there are 8 to 10 911 calls for police service to every 1 911 call for EMS or fire service. Now, my dispatchers tell me that that statistic may not be accurate. They're hearing 2 or 3 fire or EMS calls within the limits of city limits of Sebastian in a 24-hour period. But the numbers relate to the number of calls being transferred. We get, like I said, we have 3,400 calls transferred through November 30th of this year. And if we use 2 calls a day in a 24-hour period for fire and EMS being transferred back, you can see there's quite a reduction in the number of times that the transfer button has to be pushed. Sebastian is not acting independently in this request. Our first order of business to obtain our goal was to get a recommendation from the Emergency Service District Advisory Committee. We presented our case at a meeting on April 20th of this year. The committee also heard opposition to our request. They postponed their decision for a month to research the data, and on May 18th, 2006, recommended that Sebastian should have their own public safety answering point. The EMS director has outlined 3 issues for your consideration, and I refer to your backup material. Number 1, will a decentralization of the sheriff's office public safety answering point benefit the 911 system countywide? He says no, it will not. I say it does benefit the countywide system. It reduces the workload to the very busy sheriff's office dispatchers by at least 12%. Giving them more time to spend answering calls in the unincorporated county. It allows Sebastian to deliver customized service to its residents It will also provide one more location for backing up the system in case of power outages in the Vero area. Number 2 that he has in your backup is, does Sebastian's request promote a countywide cost savings? He says no, and I agree that it will not save any money. However, it will not increase the cost to any county resident. Sebastian is not requesting any funds from ad valorem taxes. The radio improvements he mentions are being paid for by Sebastian and will occur regardless of the outcome of your decision today. The cost for the 911 equipment is a legitimate expense to be paid out of the existing 911 fund. At the end of the fiscal year 04-05, that fund balance was $980,000. The fund has been growing by approximately $150,000 to $180,000 annually for the past several years, and by statute, the money needs to be expended or the surcharge reduced. Please let me say one more time that we are not asking for any county taxpayers' tax dollars. We are asking for funds from the surcharge fund balance that has to be expended for the 911 system. The amount of money requested is a one-time expenditure of approximately $180,000. The recurring monthly charge by Bell South will be about $1,885. That's for the call-taking equipment, and they have a monthly charge on that like they do for your phone service. Sebastian generates approximately $60,000 annually for that fund. In addition to the 911 funds, Florida State Statute Chapter 318.21 provides for a portion of traffic fines to be paid to the county to maintain an intergovernmental radio communication program. $12.50 from every moving violation in the county is earmarked for this fund. Sebastian generates approximately $36,000 annually for this fund, while a maintenance agreement for the radios would cost $3,600 annually. That means $32,400 is going into the radio pool from Sebastian. Number 3 in the backup is, are there reasonable alternatives? The EMS director says yes. I agree there are always some alternatives, but I'm not sure they are reasonable. Moving Sebastian dispatchers to the sheriff's office would create a workspace problem. We would need 2 consoles in the supervisor's office, plus additional telephones and FCIC, NCIC workstations, as well as computers and related equipment. Call takers at the sheriff's office would still have to determine if the call is in Sebastian and route the call to the proper dispatcher. That is the same problem we are facing now, and the same amount of equipment is needed. Nothing would be solved, however, a new problem would be created for Sebastian. Moving the dispatchers would require us to close our station during evening hours, weekends, and holidays, or hire additional personnel to provide services for walk-in citizens. The E911 system is designed to be fragmented. It is so sophisticated that it can route a 911 call to any designated location, regardless of how chopped up jurisdictional boundaries may be. If there is efficiency and centralization, we might all benefit from a regional Treasure Coast 911 dispatch center. It could be located in Port St. Lucie and cover 4 county areas. That is an alternative, but I don't think it is reasonable, and I don't think you do either. On a smaller scale, I don't think the county centralization alternative is reasonable for the city of Sebastian or the city of Vero Beach. Sebastian, as well as the county, is growing. The calls for service are increasing. The 30-year-old system needs adjustment. The addition of a PSAP in Sebastian would improve the response time to Sebastian residents and allow more time for the sheriff's office dispatchers to concentrate on the unincorporated county calls. The city of Sebastian has taken steps to ready itself for the change. We have expended funds to enhance our dispatch center with equipment, personnel, and training. The 911 system for Sebastian is broken. Please consider taking this step to correct the problem. Sebastian residents will get faster service, and the sheriff's dispatchers will reduce their workload by 12%. Can I answer any questions?
Any questions from anyone?
To refresh my mind, this is a new commission, but this came back before us. I don't see any reflection in the backup material on that.
Let's see what?
I don't see any reflection in the backup material on the last, the last time this came forward. I see reflection, is it? Where?
Yes, it is.
Where is it?
Yeah. Well, first they mentioned it here, and then in the,
So what do we,
back here's the motions,
What page is it?
and also on the Emergency Services Committee, their motions, their minutes.
I think she's talking about the commission's vote.
Yeah,
Oh, the
my
commission,
vote.
the vote was 3-2.
The conversations, and was it recommended back then, yay or nay? I mean, refresh me here.
Okay, it was back then, it was recommended not to give the 911 system to Sebastian. In fact, the recommendation...
There is all that in here.
Commissioner, it's on page 169.
there you go.
There are two sets of materials for this presentation. One was the additional backup prepared by the City of Sebastian Chief of Police. The other was prepared by your staff.
Where is the vote on this, on the commission?
Yeah, Commissioner, I'll help you with it. I remember, and I don't see it in here even on 161. I don't know where I'm missing that.
169?
161.
Vote is not...
It doesn't say which commissioners voted for it.
And the reason.
I can tell you.
And the reason.
I can tell you.
I can tell you.
I can tell you. Will somebody speak up?
Well, as long as Mr. Davis is at the podium, we'll let him tell us. He's got a great memory, too. I can attest to that.
Well, I'm really looking for the recommendation from staff and the reason
All right.
it wasn't approved and the change.
The staff...
Wait just a minute, Joe. One of the things that I want to say, because it's the first one here, it says direct staff to consolidate on page 161, just one of the three things in the recommendations. That was done last time. Nothing, and I repeat, nothing has happened in that direction.
Yeah,
Right here.
it was voted on.
I'm looking at the
It was
meeting
voted on to
packet.
consolidate it, and even more than had been in the initial staff recommendation, it was the city of Vero Beach to stand alone was also, and it was controversial, and we have been moving rather slowly because we felt it might come back. That's the truth.
Okay.
That's true.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Were you done, Sandra? Did you want any more questions? Or?
No, I'll listen to y'all and then I'll ask.
Chief Davis, I think you mentioned, I just want to verify, because it was in the minutes from the Emergency Services Advisory Committee meeting that Chief Dappin with Vero Beach said even if they get an EMS or a fire call and they transfer that to the sheriff's 911, that their officers still go ahead and respond to the scene, or usually there first. And I think you did say that the Sebastian police officers would do the same thing, that if you get an EMS or fire call that you transfer back to the sheriff, that your officers would still be responding and in all likelihood be one of the first responders to the scene. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I think it's by us arriving first, it's a big assistance to the fire department and the medical, the ambulance. They don't have to look for the address. They see the police car there, and our guys patrol in a compact zone, so they're quite familiar with the streets and the addresses. Sebastian is different from the rest of the county. It doesn't have numbered streets and avenues. It has...
You'll have Sebastian Highlands.
Good old TDC.
They also don't run north and south and east and west.
They do. It's just the same road that does all four.
And that leads to with Sebastian growing, I think it's good to have local dispatchers that are familiar with the different subdivisions and can immediately know if that's in their jurisdiction or not. I know a couple of years ago I tried to call in an accident off State Road 60 that was right in front of the turnpike at Yeehaw Junction, And I went back and forth to dispatchers trying to figure out where I was, and I didn't know where Yeehaw was. And, so I think the more local people you have handling those calls that are familiar with the neighborhoods and know that, I know that subdivision, yeah, we're right on it. I think that's better than trying to cast two out of a net, so.
Wesley?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I had, whenever this came up the last time, I visited with both 911 centers, and then I had an extensive conversation over the weekend with Mr. Witt, and he suggested I talk to the Port St. Lucie Police Chief, which I did so this morning, and had a conversation with them. And I guess my position hasn't changed on it. I think that the issue is whenever somebody dials 911, they shouldn't have to be told, hold please, let me connect you. And right now we have I'm not defending the system that we have. I'm not defending saying to the city of Sebastian that the county has the right system. However, on the other side of that, I don't think that Vero Beach has the right system either. I understand what Commissioner O'Brien just made as far as having call takers that are familiar with a jurisdictional area. That makes a lot of sense. The jurisdictional area can be sitting in a unified system. It can be sitting in a hardened system. It can be sitting in one spot. I don't care whether it's the county in charge of it. I don't care whether it's the sheriff in charge of it. I believe we ought to have a seamless system so that whenever somebody dials 911, they should not be put on hold. And right now we do have that, I will admit. However, fragmenting the system, we have that also.
Well, Commissioner, in all due respect, the number of times you push the button will be reduced.
And the number of calls
from over 3,000 to probably less than 500.
No, and I understand that, Chief, and also the number of calls. There will be less people put on hold by granting City of Sebastian theirs. But I don't take any pride out of having less put on hold than I do more put on hold. I'm not defending the system we have. That's why whenever I made my decision the last time to go to not fragment the system and to have it all centralized. That way we don't have somebody that does need to be put on hold. So that's my and
you don't want to make it better.
Absolutely. I want to improve what we have.
You don't think this makes it better?
I do think that it may be a small step in the right direction, but it's not an ultimate step where it should be, and that's why when of the three directions that was given, one was to direct the implementation of the PSAP in Sebastian. The other one was to continue to operate separately, and that was not my decision either. That was not what I'd like to see. The other one was to direct staff to consolidate. And so, again, and I said this to Mr. Witt over the weekend, I'm not defending the system that we have. Any system that puts anybody on hold when they dial 911 is, to me, not acceptable.
Okay. Any other comments before I say something?
We've just received this, so I do now, reflect a little bit better on this. This is what happened at the last commission meeting, and your conversation, and the conversation we had was toward consolidation.
Yes, it was.
As we did and it was hard doing the firefighters, but it worked. And they say it worked, and their bumpiness is starting to ferret out. And I think this is hard, but I do think the future is consolidation, and everyone in the same place in a hardened building and with all the backup equipment. So I'm in the same position that I was previously too.
It may come as a surprise, but I'm in the same position I was back then too.
Oh, you're chairman now.
Yeah, but I can't make a motion yet. At any rate, the way I look at this is first, I don't necessarily agree with a central dispatch. I don't think it's worked all that wonderful for St. Lucie County. When I was sheriff, got a lot of complaints. I don't know if it's still going on down there with the central dispatch, but there was friction. There was who was running it, and this PD didn't like it, and the sheriff was upset with it, and fire and EMS were upset with it, and they had friction going back and forth. It was run by an independent committee. Didn't work as well in that committee that oversaw it, weren't involved necessarily in law enforcement and emergency services. So there were problems with it. It's not a fix-all. The other problem I have with this is we got to go with what we got. And right now we've got 20,000 plus residents in the city of Sebastian are the only people in this entire county that are getting second-hand or second-rate dispatching. And that is no reflection on the 911 system, or Sandy, I see her in the audience. That is a fact that the sheriff's office dispatches for everybody except the city of Vero Beach and the city of Sebastian. So when a 911 call comes in, all of the other agencies get immediate dispatch. Yours has to be transferred to Sebastian and then re-questioned and sent out again. The other thing is you got 8 or 10 to 1. And the city of Sebastian is not a second-class town. They're larger than the city of Vero Beach, not only in population, but in area. And I think that we've got to go with what we've got. We've got to protect the citizens and give them the best possible service we can give them today. And once that's set up, if somebody wants to move toward central dispatch, then that's something we could look at. But right now, several months ago when this came up, that was the motion, I believe, was to go back to central dispatch and to take a look at that. Nothing has been done in that direction. And you're talking probably a year or 2 years, 3 years to go through the whole system, to build that, to set up the committee, all the details, and to move it from the sheriff's office in the city of Vero Beach to a central dispatch center. And I fully support the request from Sebastian City, and I think it's not only in the best interest of the city, but I think it does help diversify, and it also does take some of the load off the dispatch in the sheriff's office. And I'm strongly in favor of and if I could make a motion, I would, that we allow the city of Sebastian to have their 911 center.
Mr. Chairman.
Right. Yes. Go ahead, take the podium, Sandy.
I realize that 2 of the commissioners have discussed that they own airplanes on a previous discussion. I do not own an airplane, but I've had the occasion to drive a patrol vehicle at your pleasure and my luxury, and I think I'm fully aware of what takes place with the communication. I've had the occasion to be in the 911 center, in the sheriff's office, as well as the police department, and I've visited the Port St. Lucie dispatch center, and I do want to add that there is an element of confusion with so many agencies being overlapped, and there is some stress and tension in that centralized unit. I don't know if that's been absolved, but that was within the past year that I did visit that. Chief, with all that said, what service, what element of service will you be able to bring to the city of Sebastian that's not being brought now? And I am a Sebastian resident as well.
The element of service that is provided by 911 is rapid response, and that's what we'll be able to bring in areas of law enforcement as well as fire and medical service. We will be able to respond on an average to an emergency within 3 minutes. That's a pretty good response time. From the time you call 911 to the time someone knocks on your front door, 180 seconds or thereabouts is what we'll be bringing to Sebastian. Right now, the transfer of the call is not the transfer of the call that slows this response so much. It's if a call goes well and it's transferred, everything's smooth, it only adds about 40 seconds to transfer a normal call. The problem comes when the location is not recognized as being Sebastian and the call doesn't get transferred. Now, we've kept a little log since April 15th of how those things can go wrong, and it's surprising how many times the call is lost.
Is that with street names that are similar as far as...
I don't know how it happens, Mr. Fletcher. I'm just aware of what we get after the call's transferred. I don't know what happens with the SO before it's transferred, but our records show about 50 times since April 15th that there has been confusion in getting that call to Sebastian.
And one of the other questions I had was that we were concerned about what would take place as far as asking what type of service call this is and then transferring the call, which is obviously taking place on the other end as well.
I have a little...
Do you have a little...
Yeah, I guess we're going to have to use it, Kim.
Got a chart.
If Sebastian has their 911 center, this chart will show you, give you some idea of what will happen. You see the call is received up in the top box. Call received, Sebastian Dispatch Center. The dispatcher will answer the phone, 911. If they determine the problem is a law enforcement problem, that branches off to the left. They confirm the location from their ANI or their automatic number indicator. They dispatch a unit, obtain additional information, and relay that information to the unit that's responding. If the caller indicates that it's a fire or medical emergency, the dispatcher will tell a person to hang on. They push the button, which is that 40-second delay I'm telling you about, and then the SO dispatcher takes over. The person would only give their information one time. They wouldn't give all the information to the Sebastian dispatcher, who then relays it to the sheriff. It would be the sheriff's dispatcher getting that information first time. I also understand that from Vero Beach that when they transfer that call, they're also transferring the Annie and Allie information. That doesn't happen for us now. When the sheriff's office transfers a call to us, we don't get that automatic number locator. So it's a little bit, it would be a little better situation when we transfer the call from Sebastian to the sheriff. We'd also stay on the line, get the information at the same time the sheriff's office is getting their information, and then we would dispatch a Sebastian unit.
With an AED on board?
Yes, yes, sir.
And they're all first responders as well?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman. Oh, I'm sorry.
Currently, the information is being done verbally as opposed to electronically?
Yes, sir.
And with this proposal, the information will be transferred electronically?
As well as verbal.
So there's no burden of reciting the same
Okay.
Can I explain that?
Okay.
Because the Sebastian Police Department does not currently have a 911 system that allows the 911 information to transfer the location and the number, which I believe is what the chief's talking about. We do verbally give them the address when we transfer the call and the telephone number, because it is not something that they're seeing displayed.
Which is not efficient. I think we would all agree with that. I mean,
And I agree. But there are a couple of things I would like to say. Stacking calls, I want to make sure that we understand what we're referring to stacking calls. When I think of a stack call, I think of it as something that's being held. That's not necessarily the case. We are receiving a tremendous influctuation of 911 calls from cellular phones. A cellular phone does not give you an address. It gives you an alternate number to be able to call the person back, which this phase 2 that we're going to with 911 will allow for us to give a latitude and longitude to help locate a person more closely than what we're getting right now. Right now, what we get is a tower site. When we answer a call, we have no way of knowing where it's at. Yes, we are going to have to interview that caller. There are going to be times, as Commissioner Fletcher said, that the addresses are very similar. You get a 1400 US 1, there's a 1400 US 1 in Vero, there's a 1400 in Sebastian. So there's going to be a times when the calls, we are not going to know where they're at, and that's not necessarily going to be indicative of a phone number as it used to be in the past, where 589 numbers were Sebastian and 571 numbers were Fellsmere. That's not necessarily the case anymore. So in answer to your question, those calls that were being stacked, Chief Davis, I don't know that those figures are accurate, and without actually checking, I couldn't really verify that. Yes, there are going to be times when calls are not recognized as being in Sebastian, but it is a #1 priority of any dispatcher, and I don't care what dispatch station or department that you work with, our #1 priority is to get help to those people. So we are not going to stack any call or hold it purposely if we know that it's in Sebastian. If we know it's in Sebastian, it's going to get sent to Sebastian, just like it is if we know it's in Vero, and vice versa. I don't want to play on the call getting stacked, because I don't really think that that's the issue. Yes, it would take some workload off of the Sheriff's Department dispatchers if Sebastian was handling their own calls. I do agree with Chairman Wheeler that the ultimate is having a consolidated dispatch center. When that is actually going to happen, I don't know. I don't know how far down the line that is. So, you know, it may be some advantage to Sebastian if we're talking years down the road. They are becoming more populated. They are outgrowing Vero Beach city limits in leaps and bounds. You know, until we go to a consolidated center, maybe there needs to be the opportunity to look at what's going to happen with Sebastian. I know that there's a cost involved, and I want it clearly understood that if we go to a consolidated center, it's not going to be the sheriff's office. And I don't think that the sheriff's office could accommodate, especially not in the facility we have now, a consolidated dispatch center.
Well, that would be determined who would run it, whether it be the sheriff or an agency or whether a separate committee. Once you set it up, it could be done several different ways. Sandy, let me ask you, what do you see the disadvantage being with Sebastian having their own dispatch center? Do you see a disadvantage?
I will say the same thing I said about Vero Beach Police Department having their own, even though the Sheriff's Department and the Police Department both receive 911 at the same time. I, like you, have a problem with anyone ever being said, hold on and let me transfer you when you are calling for an emergency.
And that's the problem right now, is that's what's happening to 20,000 residents in the city of Sebastian. Right.
As it is in the city of Vero Beach.
Yeah.
It is not
the other way around.
But I can see, you know, you push one button to transfer fire and EMS in, it's done. With law enforcement, where the bulk of the calls are coming from is law enforcement. And the other thing is all of this set aside from my take, they are an autonomous city and a part of this community. They raise funds in their community to support this system. And they should have a right, just as the city of Vero Beach does, or just as the unincorporated area of the county has, to use these funds to give better service to their citizens in the city of Sebastian. And that's where I'm coming from on this primarily, is they should have a right to choose the type of service they want and what they're willing to pay for. And they're hiring the employees and so on and so forth. It's not coming out of our budget. No. And we're taking funds that are collected from landlines and cell phone lines to support this system. And you know, when we set up there, and there's, I don't know, what is the 22,000 people in the city of Sebastian now?
About 22,000.
Yeah. 22,000 people in, what, 18 square miles?
Somewhere there.
Anyway, I just want to know if there was, I don't see a disadvantage. I only see advantages. This all seems to circulate around economics. And,
I'd want to, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm not looking at dollars or cents, and quite frankly, if it was a dollar or cents, I would get with the county administrator and try to find money for it. It's not a dollars or cents issue to me. No. To me, it's a 40-second issue. That's where it's not anything to do with autonomy. It doesn't have anything to do with money. Doesn't have anything to do with where the dollars are generated. Vero Beach, whenever they call, they have a please hold for emergency services, not police. Sebastian, they have a please hold for police, not emergency services. Now, that means we have one of each system. And again, I don't want anybody to think that I'm defending the system that we have right now. What I am doing is I'm saying that we have a system that needs to be improved. I do see in time that technology will allow us with the GPS systems to be able to more finely pinpoint cell phone calls. I don't think that even will be remedied with the city of Sebastian having their own. Vero Beach can't do that. They still have the issue with the tower not knowing where that 911 call's coming from with a cell phone. They know it's in the city of Vero Beach, but that's about as close as they can get.
And we have blank spots on the beach.
And we clearly do. And again, I don't want anybody to think that I'm trying to put public safety, a dollar figure on public safety.
That's not my point. My point, and as Chief Davis said, 8 or 10 to 1 calls are law enforcement. The other thing is when you dispatch fire, and particularly, and most of the calls come from EMS on that side, you know, it's a variety of things. Somebody may be having a heart attack. They got defibrillation machines in the car. They're there first. The police car's there. In fact, I've talked to some counties that are now dispatching the initial responder from EMS on motorcycles because they can get around traffic. They can pull right up to the front door and hop off the motorcycle and get in. It's something that I've heard about that I'm going to be looking into for hours, given the opportunity and time. But the other thing is you know, I'll tell you what. If I'm laying on the floor having a heart attack, possibly, and I won't know what it is, maybe it's indigestion, and we want to have you call the ambulance to get there. Yes, it's important for that ambulance to get there. But first, I don't know what's wrong with me, and I'm scared, or if it's my family member. But I'll tell you what, when somebody's breaking in my house, or beating my kid up, or running a stop sign down with a drunk driver, you know, I know what that is, and I want immediate response. I don't want that extra 40 seconds. And I think when the calls are 10 to 1, roughly, law enforcement is where this is handy, and it's handy not only for law enforcement issues, but also they'll have a car on the way before they get a chance to dispatch an ambulance. They push the button here and dispatch the car, and like he said, the big thing is when the ambulance, the fire truck's showing up, they see the police car sitting in front of the house, the blue light's going, they don't have to look for an address. And I think that helps their response time.
Absolutely. And I don't mean to differ with you on this issue, but I can tell you anybody, the most important service that they're going to need is the one they're calling for. And it doesn't matter if it's emergency services, it doesn't matter if it's law enforcement. If they need it, that's the most important call, that's the most important time, that's the time they don't want a 40-second hold, please. And any other decision we make other than to direct staff to consolidate, to me, is 40-second hold, please. And we need to have this inside the Emergency Operations Center where it is hardened. We do need to have a backup facility in Sebastian. I don't doubt that. We also need to have a backup facility in Vero Beach. But I'm telling you that right now we have a hold, please.
So for the sake of this, rather than having one person wait 40 seconds, we'll continue to have 10 people wait 40 seconds.
No, you're missing my point. It doesn't. Number 2 is leave it the way it is.
And that's not working.
That's correct.
You want consolidated.
Yes, sir, I do.
And we did that last time and nothing happened.
I'll take full responsibility for that. It was controversial, and you even mentioned to me, Commissioner Wheeler, that don't rush for this because it's coming back to vote, and I was...
That's not true, Joe.
It doesn't
I
matter.
told you it'd be coming back to vote. I never told you not to rush with it.
Well, we don't have the EOC bill.
Wait just a minute here. We're going to get something straight. The date on this was June 20th. And the election was in September when this commission changed, and hopefully it would change to do some things that I happen to agree with last year. I never came to you June 20th or any other time and said, hold this and don't rush it, nor any time after the election did I tell you that. I did tell you that it would be coming back for rediscussion in front of the commission if I had my way.
Well, if that's the case, you would see why would we waste time on something that may change back?
Because you were given direction on June 20th to do that, and nothing has happened. And nothing was going to happen.
And the city of Vero Beach also was very upset that we were going to look at taking their PSAP, and we were dealing with that. I had several conversations with city council and with city manager Gabbard and Dappin about it. And so, you know, we thought there was a good chance that this would be coming back. We were going to spend time on it. That was a judgment call on my part, and I take full responsibility, as usual.
Well, bottom line is Sebastian's asking for something, Vero's got it, and Sebastian should have the right to police and control and dispatch their own people. It's not up to the county to dictate to them how they want to run their community.
And should it not be consolidated? If it's good enough for Vero Beach, it is good enough for Sebastian.
And if they can get their 911 center operating and up, and if you want to approach and look at consolidation, have some workshops on that and see what's all involved and how long it'll take, we can address that at that time. In the meantime, we got 22,000 people in Sebastian getting not the service they should have from their own police department.
Nor emergency services if we go the other way.
I'm sorry, I didn't reckon. Go ahead.
Deputy Chief David Curry, Vero Beach Police Department. I just wanted to address a couple things maybe. One was the when you press please hold, our dispatchers, and I'm sure the others do, they stay on the line. It's not please hold and there's no live body. They stay on the line and automatically dispatch an officer. So it's in the city of Vero Beach. Our dispatchers stay on the line with the person. We're transferring for a EMS or fire.
But there's still 40 seconds though.
Well, automatically an officer is being dispatched as a first responder. Again, as Chief Davis said, with the AEDs and whatever we need to do to take care of it. And being on the road before, I can tell you that we certainly, if not most or all the time, we were the first ones there. As you know, we've had our own PSAP for a number of years, and our city residents have come to expect and deserve the service that we've been able to provide them. And as you also know, Chief Dappin has come before you and expressed his desire not to be consolidated, as well as City Manager Gabbard.
And between that, you're looking at 40,000 people in the county.
We have also, if I may, one more thing. You know, when we have our dispatchers under one roof, it's been mentioned, our city, they know the city, they know the people. They're under one roof. We have supervisors that supervise those individuals. If a resident has a concern, they come to us about a concern with its dispatcher or how something was dispatched. We can readily look at that as an agency, as opposed to if it's at another location, we have to, okay, what happened? Now they got to speak to us because it's our city as far as where we were and who went. It's just nicely run as far as being under our roof.
And Wesley, you keep bringing up the 40 seconds, and maybe I'm not understanding what you're saying. But what you're saying, if we don't give Sebastian the right for their own 911 center because of that 40 seconds, that means 10% of the calls they handle. So we're penalizing 90% of the other people that have to wait 40 seconds for law enforcement calls.
Commissioner, let me read the first one. Recommendation number 1 is direct staff to consolidate the 911 responsibilities at one location.
And how long do you think that'll take?
Commissioner, I'm setting policy today that might take 15 years to get implemented.
Well, then let's approve
just
their 911 center.
Just because it's going to take time doesn't mean it shouldn't be done.
Well, we can work on that while we're still providing a service to the citizens of the city of Sebastian. And I'd almost bet you that you're never going to see that get off the ground anyway.
Well, if we don't, I think it'd be insubordination then.
Well, it depends on where the vote goes here.
Well, that's true.
But when you start getting into the details of this, you're going to have the sheriff's office, you're going to have the city of Vero Beach, you're going to have city of Sebastian, and there's going to be a lot of devil in the details and lining all these things up, and you're going to be able to find out that that's not what the community wants.
I can't help but think that the community doesn't want to be put on hold whenever they make an emergency call. I don't care whether it's 911 for ambulance or 911 for law enforcement.
Okay. Well, I think we've beaten this to death.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Paladin.
Mr. Chairman, listen, I think that Sebastian are good neighbors. They've been exceptional neighbors. They've supported us when we were going through our concurrency pains. They've supported us in almost everything possible that we've brought before them. Commissioner Davis, you said that what the chief brought forward, it wasn't the ultimate solution, but it would be a little bit better. Commissioner O'Brien, you made a great point about the policeman being on the site first, finding the place, not looking for it, being more familiar with the neighborhood. That's a giant point that I didn't think of. That's a great idea. And something happened just a few days ago. I attended a meeting with Commissioner Wheeler, Commissioner Bryan, and our Community Development Director, Mr. Keating, and that was at the Regional Development Committee. And Mr. Wheeler brought forth something that he used a term that really kind of hits home on this matter. He said, you know, gentlemen, if there's some gray area here, if you can't quite get to one side or the other, we value something called home rule. Home rule. I mean, Sebastian, the people of Sebastian deserve the very best service that they feel they're getting. Home rule there seems to be a lot of gray area here. It can go either way. Home rule is what the city of Sebastian and the police chief in Sebastian is asking for. I would lean in that direction. And finally, last but not least, we're blessed with having two people that have an extensive history in law enforcement in our commission. That's sort of rare. So if I have a gray area or I'm not really sure which way it would be the best way, I've got to go with over 20 years of experience that Mr. Fletcher has, Commissioner Fletcher has, and Commissioner Wheeler, an ex-sheriff, and has several years experience. I got to go with what they think is best in the situation if they were in that situation. And I think that's what they're bringing forward. Wesley, I would ask you to really consider this and what you said. This is a little bit better, not the ultimate solution. And I think that we should give the people in Sebastian and the police chief in Sebastian, who's done one heck of a job, I think we ought to give him the opportunity to carry that forth and let the people in Sebastian think that they deserve the very best service. And Ms. Bowden, I'd ask you if you saw any reason where you could lean in that direction. I'd ask you to lean in the direction of the people in Sebastian, because we're going to be needing their help in the future here, and if they need our help, I'd like to give them as much help as we can. Finally, I thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we direct staff to implement a public safety answering point for the Sebastian Police Department, and that staff expedites it as soon as possible and works closely with Chief Davis to make sure that we transition this in a timely manner.
Second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Hold, please.
Pardon?
Hold, please.
You want 40 seconds?
Yeah, all right, start the clock.
Okay.
I just want to explain mine, that I am going to stay my course.
Yeah.
And I understand your plea, and I understand that I want the very best for every citizen in this community, and the future is consolidation.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can I request clarification on the direction of staff? This is a request to purchase the equipment, to pay for equipment, and to pay for the phone line for the PSAP, not a request for funding salaries for any employees at any time in the future.
I think
Same situation as we have in Vero is.
That is my motion. I think Chief Davis has outlined where the funding would come from, and that this is not just for, that the City of Sebastian is going to provide the salaries for their dispatchers and those type of costs. This is strictly to purchase the equipment needed for the PSAP for City of Sebastian.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Did you have another comment under discussion, or?
Mr. Chairman, I just, before Chief Davis might have something to say now, he does not have something to say. He's going to accept whatever's going to be said now. Well, I just want to say that the men and women who serve in Indian River County Sheriff's Office, particularly with the Communications Center, Ms. Fox, as you know how much I believe in the group, and the same way in the city of Vero Beach, I do agree that we need to have another element for such a large growing community, and I base my decision not on the skills and abilities of the Sheriff's Office and not of the city of Vero, and most certainly I have had exposure to all three elements. And I believe that my decision is being made basically since I've spent quite a few days now since this has been on the agenda with many people in the city of Sebastian, and I've been polling and talking, and I must consider what the people want, and that those are the residents that are going to be greatly affected.
And I'd like to kind of reiterate that. Sandy, I worked with you. I think the Sheriff's Office dispatch system is probably the finest in that agency, and one of the finest in the state of Florida. Even going back to talk about history, when I was running for sheriff against Sheriff Dobeck, I could never find fault with the 911 center. You guys do an excellent job, and this is no reflection on your ability or anything. I just really strongly believe that the people should have a right to control their own destiny within their city limits or within our county, to some degree. That doesn't apply to the urban service line, of course.
Had to get that out.
And in closing, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to congratulate the city of Sebastian on it. I just think that that everybody would be better off if we did have a seamless system. And I believe the system that we have now is flawed. I believe the system that Vero Beach has is flawed. I believe the system that Sebastian's fixing to get has flaws. So,
well, just Wesley, you can bring that forward, and we can look in that direction if you'd like to. And my position is let's fix the problem today as quickly as possible, and we can always move in that direction. We're a growing county; things are changing frequently.
But of the three options, that is option number one, and I choose to go with that too.
Yeah, the motion was basically for option number 3, and formulated the way Commissioner O'Brien said. So with that, we'll call the question, and all those in favor of Mr. O'Brien's motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-2.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to take a break now for the TV. What do they call it?
Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Your Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment. Indian River County Commission meeting is in a brief recess. Please stay tuned. The meeting will reconvene in just a moment.
Meeting back to order. The next item is under General Services, and that's the Indian River County Jail Expansion Project, change order number 6, memorandum dated December 12, 2006, found on pages 170 through 179.
Hi, my name is Tom Frame. I'm General Services Director. As you know, we currently have the expansion of the jail underway, and part of that particular jail expansion deals with 256 bed addition to the facility out there. If you kind of visualize that unit, it's shaped like an H. There's 4 quadrants to that housing unit, and each one of those housing units has, I think it's, 128, 64 people in each of those units. One of the important issues in those facilities is the recreation area. In the corner of each one of those 4 units is an open air recreation area, and the intent is this is a direct supervised type unit where the sheriff's deputy will be actually, the corrections officer will be actually inside the facility, and the intent is that we'll never have to take the inmates out of that facility for recreational purposes. The corner section of the facility provides for the recreation outlet, and they can go in and out of that without leaving the facility. And a problem that's developed in that is the fact that in the directions given to the architect by staff was that we bring a roofed area over that, and it's turned out that that roofed area has created a problem in that it doesn't provide the proper daylight and outside air that's necessary for that unit to provide the requirement for outdoor access. And we've looked at a number of different ways to try to correct that problem, and what we finally come up with is the most economic way that we can solve that problem. Unfortunately, it does have a price tag to it, and the fix to that's about $75,000 for each one of those quadrants. And I suppose that's the bad news. The good news is, if there is any good news, is that we do have the money within the GMP to correct the problem. We don't need to add additional funding to it. Today here we've got Captain McMullen, who is the jail administrator. We have a representative from the architect's office. We have a representative from Peter Brown, our contract manager, and Mr. Lynn Williams, who's the project manager, our facilities manager, who's the direct project manager on that project, is here, and they can they can answer any direct questions on some of the details of it. It's something that we do need to fix. We don't have a whole lot of choice in fixing it. The other side that's probably good, the correction to it will not delay the completion of that jail facility and trying to meet the time element of April 2007.
Okay, any questions? I don't have any questions. I got one comment, and it pertains to Sheriff Raymond's letter, the 3rd paragraph, where it says, sometimes during the revision process, the original design was changed without input from my operations staff. These changes became known to my staff on October 18, 2006. I don't disagree with that statement in itself, but it is a little misleading. It's my understanding that these changes apparently were discussed. There's minutes to indicate that, and both sides, Sheriff's Office and our people, were there, and somehow there was an oversight. So it's not that the county staff or the sheriff's staff is either at fault or blameless, but I just wanted to make it clear that this was a mutual error.
And I would like to point out also that we have tried to coordinate very, very closely with the Sheriff's Department. I know that Captain McMullen has been, I believe, at almost all the meetings, and that was our intent, to make sure that the Sheriff's Department had a close relationship to making sure that we tried to build a facility that met their needs.
Move approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any all in favor?
Could I have you have a copy of the change order in there, and there is some, we'd like to add a little additional language to the change order that just clarifies that the cost of the change is paid for out of the owner's contingency. It wasn't clear, and the contractor had asked if we'd add that language. And if you could allow us to do that and have the attorney to review it so that they're satisfied with the exact language, just for clarity purposes.
This says it's being released from the owner's contingency.
They had some concern. They just want it clarified, and we do have some language that would clarify that, just so there's no question about it.
No
Okay.
question.
Okay, we have a motion, second, any discussion? Not all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is a change order, acceptance of change order number 20 for the new county administration building memorandum dated December 13th, 2006, found on pages 180 through 237.
Yes, Steve Bloom, project manager for this county administration project. There are 5 items on this change order. They're various, but I did want to say, while we were talking about the owner contingency, that we have a similar program within this project. And following the approval of change order 19 earlier today, the owner contingency is up to $482,000 and change. There will be probably more funds available a bit later. However, this change order, the first item, these are not want type items, these are need type items, first of all. The first item on that change order is the requirement for a 2-hour wall surrounding the muster room and dividing the cafe from the main building. And the reason is that there were these, by square footage purposes, it puts us above a limit by which we need to be fire separated. And you might say, well, the building's sprinklered and the cafe is basically on the outside skin of the building, but the fire prevention people came along following the establishment of the GMP and required that we do this 2-hour wall. So that has taken place. The second item is provide air cove through the atrium ceilings in buildings 1 and buildings 2. In the beginning, once again, after the GMP was established, there was some question as to the details on that air cove at the top of the ceiling there. And during further discussion, the architect had to provide some additional detail, and it was the contractor had taken it on his own to configure that in a way that he thought was appropriate. And there was a disagreement there, and so anyway, the additional cost to get that configured properly so the air movement could be properly handled was another $18,500. The item 3 was provide hot water for toilet rooms. There was a toilet room, a janitor's office, or a janitor's room, and 2 restrooms, 2 very small in building 2 and 2 in building 1, that were essentially public restrooms, even though they were located in the clerk's area there, that were not provided hot water. So we felt it was imperative to provide that at that time to follow the pattern in the rest of the building. And that was an additional $9,700. The fourth item is a revision to the ductwork in the commission chambers. Now, this was something that the affected ductwork was already on the job, and when they got in there and tried to, if I had a chance to show you on the drawings, you'd see how complex the relationships are with ductwork and structure and all that, and it was found that the routing would not work, so we needed a revision to the ductwork in order to make it work properly. And the final one is provide condensate drains for air handling units and fan coil units in a number of mechanical rooms. And what happened there was there were a number of drains provided in these rooms, but when the equipment was configured and finally selected and installed, it was found that there was an additional need for moving some of the condensate drains. One unit was provided with a single drain, and it turned out it needed 3 separate ones because it was a 3-section unit. So these are somewhat important. Some of them are unfortunate, but they are needed, and they are configured within our philosophy of trying to really get the best cost for such changes and to result in a final product that is the way it should be.
Move staff recommendation.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0. Next is the 43rd Avenue Complex, change order number 7, and request for release of retainage. Memorandum dated December 11th, 2006, found on pages 238 through 243.
Chairman, again, it's Tom Frame, General Services Director. You have a transmittal memo, I think, that itemizes a number of things that we needed to do to complete the 43rd facility. You'll note that the total cost on that came out at $32,076.31. We also negotiated with the contractor for some late delivery on the building. We're able to reduce that by $20,000, which gets us down really to $12,076.31, and we'd also like to request the release of the retention on the project. It's completed, the punch list is done, and as you saw yesterday at the facility, it's a good looking facility.
And move staff recommendation.
I'll second that, and if I could have some quick
We have
discussion.
a motion and a second under discussion.
Yes, I really, and it has to do with going to the facility yesterday. I had the opportunity to see Commissioner again and many of the individuals that were on the space, or task force, space aware, and so much of the time, previous commissions get pinned with a lot of issues that go wrong in the past, perhaps. But I complimented her and her committee. Addressing the space needs right now, as it really puts this commission in an easy position going forward. And I wanted to thank her for that, and you could tell it's going right because there's been very little complaints, very little issues, and when you see it come off without a hitch like this one did, I just want to compliment the previous commissions on their efforts for laying this out. And ready for the question.
And I think that we all appreciate Caroline's tremendous effort on this. I served on that committee with her, and she took us every place looking at all over the state.
Right.
And she's done an outstanding job, and I look forward to moving in.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Echo it. Committee-wise, I think all the people involved really did an outstanding job. And I thought I read in the paper the other day where it was $54 million with all the buildings.
What we have is a $54 million project budget that supports the administrative complex that we have under construction presently, the 43rd facility, and the Emergency Operations Center.
And that didn't include the public works, or the utilities?
Well, that was outside of that.
Right. I mean, we've had the opportunity from previous commissions to keep up with some of the growth as far as on the infrastructure side with the services, and they've done a good job.
Huge contrast to the 87 million that's been tossed around. My point. Thank you.
Excuse me, I just wanted to
Yeah.
add a couple of things. That $54 million also includes the fixtures, furniture, and equipment, and the cost of the bridge. So there's some serious money in there.
Yeah, that bridge that was required was $1.5 million. $1.5 million,
that's correct.
And that was something, that was required because they didn't want us to go through Mechanics Park. So that's a big item in that.
And about $700,000 in the impact fees.
And when will that bridge open? I thought we were going to open that earlier.
When we open the building.
The bridge will open with the building, because if it doesn't, there's some confusing and safety issues at the base of the bridge there.
Hey, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0. The next item is under General Services, new funding with Indian River County Community College for joint use library development. Memorandum dated December 13, 2006, found on pages 244 through 252.
Again, Tom Frame, General Services Director. Back in January of 2005, the Board of County Commissioners entered into a joint funding agreement with Indian River Community College, and what we ended up doing was depositing $4.3 million with the Indian River Community College Foundation. And through the new challenge grant, this allowed that money to be doubled through a legislative grant. So we ended up with a grant that doubled the money, creating $8.6 million. From the $8.6 million, $1,700,000 was allocated for the extension of College Lane, and the remainder of that money was allocated to be expended on the library. Well, there were two things that kind of occurred. One was because of increased building costs, the amount of money we had allocated toward the library was causing us to have to really look at a library that was going to be about 5,000 square feet smaller than we had originally desired or had anticipated. And number two, we were contacted both by representatives of Public Works and the college about a potential issue relative to the extended portion of College Lane and an opportunity to realign that so that it would intersect with 66th Avenue and 16th Street. The advantage in doing that, of course, would provide a really good signalized intersection and also provide a road extension that would tie into the county's transportation planning better than the way we were going to have the road go through the campus. If it stays the way it is, the actual road would come out about 660 feet north of the intersection of 16th and 66th, and would probably create an intersection that most likely would not be a controlled intersection. And so there was an expression desired to have a meeting on that. We met with the college with representatives from Public Works, and hence we've come back with a request to the county to look at providing some additional funding. The aspect of that funding would be there would be $600,000 of transportation dollars added, along with $600,000 of library impact fees, again to be placed into the foundation so that those dollars could be doubled, with the intent that that would allow us to get back to a 30,000 square foot library. We would also put our $500,000 construction grant that we've got to the state with that. And then the other money, the $600,000 of transportation monies, would allow the county then and the college to realign the road and create what is believed to be a better design. I have Chris Moore here today who might address some concerns if the board has any on the transportation issues. And in the package we've got two documents. One is the amendment to the funding agreement, and then there's an addendum to the interlocal agreement. And of course what we'd like to request is that the board authorize those after review by the appropriate county staff and the attorney of any final wording that might come out of any minor changes with the college.
Okay, any questions of Mr. Frame? I've got just a comment. The biggest problem I have with this recommendation is to take gas tax and impact fee money, $600,000, and moving it into the library fund. And I understand we're saving the money on the road and the bridge, but I just have a problem with moving money from something that's intended for transportation into the library. So I'm going to have trouble supporting this.
Let me give you a little history. Initially, when I was involved in this, and initially when the community college approached us, I saw the opportunity to have them pay for this bridge. So I stuck the bridge in the project, and then we could leverage the funds. Well, because the project is going to be tight, we aren't going to be able to build it as big a library, and I don't think it would be in the best interest of the community. I'm now looking at pulling it out and having it paid for gas tax. Before we entered in the project with the college, we would have had to build a bridge if we wanted 16th Street to go all the way through to 60th on our own. But when I saw the opportunity that the college was going to get a grant, I said, let's stick that bridge in the project and get paid for half of it by grant money. Well, in part of our negotiations now, since we've asked them to move it off, I've also pulled this out. So it does two things. It gets a better intersection, And also, if we do it this way, it pays for where it would have been paid for anyway out of gas tax. And the third thing it does, it leverages funds. We can take that additional money and we can get it doubled with the match. So I think it's a positive thing. But I'm the one that stuck it in here to start with years ago, thought I was doing the right thing, but now that the project's tied, I'd rather build a bigger library because it's going to be there forever.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, add one more thing. This takes this gets rid of another one of the, and replaces another one of the godforsaken bridges along 66th Avenue ahead of development. Don't get me wrong, there's a whole bunch of them need to be replaced, but I'll be more than happy to spend gas tax dollars to help replace those bridges.
Well, that's what we're not spending them for, though.
What's that?
We're spending the gas tax dollars to increase the size of the library.
No, sir. This is for that road right there.
There's 600,000 of gas taxes and there's 600,000 of library impact fees. Only the library impact fees are going towards the library.
Originally, before we started this project, we were going to have to put a bridge there. It was going to be paid from either gas tax or impact fees. I decided, since we were going to go in with the community college, I'd throw that into the library project.
Okay, I'm not reading this properly then. It says, by approving the new funding agreement, the county will have agreed to deposit $1.2 million, $600,000 from gas tax and traffic impact fees, and $600,000 from library impact fees. And then it goes on to say into escrow and for the foundation. So what am I missing?
We're using that to pay for the bridge, and when we do put that additional 1.2 in that college money, they get another 1.2 from the state.
So
it's the total project, if I could.
It's leverage funds through grants.
We've got monies for infrastructure and for a library. So we put it in there, and we're calling it all for a library project. And that's matching funds from the state. The state's given us those matching funds. Now we're just taking the infrastructure that's a part of the library project and going to replace a bridge on 66th Avenue. And that's coming out of gas tax dollars that were allocated for that project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a bit of a shell game, but okay.
Absolutely. It's to leverage funds. But I wouldn't want you to vote against something that...
Second.
I mean...
Trust me, I won't.
Okay. That be on the wrong side of an issue.
And have to bring it back.
Well, that was only to point out that somebody else was on the wrong side of the issue.
Wait.
We got a first and a second here.
Do you need a motion on this, or we
got one.
It's already all done. You just
made the motion.
Keep it going.
I made the motion and he seconded.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries 4-1. Okay. Public Works. Property acquisition, 8866 92nd Avenue, County Road 510 widening improvements, county project number 0610, Slab, what's that? Slabfus Investment Group, LLC, owner, memorandum dated December 11th, 2006, found on pages 253 through 269.
Jim Davis, Public Works Director. As a part of the County Road 510 project, we're realigning the Vera Lake Estates main entrance road to 89th Street, and this lot is needed to do the improvements along 89th Street. East of 510, there will be a new road named 89th Street that will connect with the Blue Water Bay project and several other residential projects at the northeast quadrant of the curve there on 510. So staff's negotiated this purchase of this lot to facilitate the 89th Street improvement. We'd recommend you approve that.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0. Utility Services, 27th Drive Petition Water Service, north of 4th Street, Indian River County project number UCP-2906, memorandum dated December 8, 2006, found on pages 270 through 275.
I move to approve staff recommendation.
We have a motion and
Second.
a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0. Move to Special Districts and Boards, Emergency Services District.
Mr. O'Brien. Oh, we did that.
We did that earlier.
Sorry.
That's all right. Emergency Services District, Emergency Services Station 3, deductive charge, change order, number 3, memorandum dated December 1st, 2006, found on pages 281 through 284.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0. Utility easement for Indian River County Fire Rescue Station number 4, memorandum dated November 27th, 2006, found on pages 285 through 288.
Move approval.
Second.
A motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0. Authorization for final payment and release retainage, Barth Construction, Inc., for the renovation repair of Emergency Services Station number 10, memorandum dated November 30th, 2006, found on pages 289 through 298.
Move approval.
Second.
A motion and second. All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0. Solid Waste Disposal District, amendment of lease agreement between MWI Corporation and Indian River County Solid Waste Disposal District, memorandum dated December 6, 2006, found on pages 299 through 303.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0, and we are adjourned.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Absolutely.
Christmas.